I'm joined today by Dan Caldwell, a fellow January 6th defendant, as well as a fellow inmate from the DC Gulag. Dan has spent the last 4 years, more or less, behind bars following the events of January 6th. I spent a decent amount of time with him. I'd like to give him the opportunity now to really give his side of the story regarding January 6th. So first off, Dan, thank you for talking with me, and I'm happy to say that you're finally out of prison, and you're back in America. So welcome back to America.
Well, Tim, I appreciate it, and thank you for the time. It's been a long time, and I know we've talked many, many times while we were in the DC jail together that these kind of things would happen, and we would have a chance to do this and to share our experiences and the truth with many, many people. So thank you for the opportunity to come on with you and do this.
Absolutely, man. So I guess first off, what I'd like to begin with is just giving you the chance to really tell people who you actually are. So, I mean, like, who actually is Dan Caldwell? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and who you really are as a man.
All right. Well, I'm from Dallas, Texas area, born and raised. Went in the Marine Corps right out of graduating high school. A few days later, I was in boot camp, so was a Marine from 1990 to 95. While in, I met a beautiful woman, and we were starting a family, and that was the reason to get out. We found our way back to Texas and took kind of a career in the semiconductor industry in Dallas area, and just started raising a family. And outside of that, just living life and living the dream of just raising a family and doing well. After the Marine Corps, just kind of working a lot and just enjoying life. Not really paying too much attention to politics at that time, just too busy raising a family. So, you kind of grow up and get older and kind of focus on different things. But, while I was in the Marine Corps, it taught me a lot of different things to prepare me for life, but also prepared me to do things I wasn't prepared for. I did bring back some issues from the Marine Corps time, and dealing with those now.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting as well. In terms of your background in the military, a substantial amount of January 6th defendants. I mean, I always say that January 6th defendants represent a fair cross section of society, but that's actually downplaying the fact that veterans are overrepresented among J6 defendants. And I think in the DC jail, especially, about a third of us were prior service.
I'd definitely say, I remember we counted up one time, it was definitely above 30%. Sure.
Yeah. So, it's interesting the way a lot of people are kind of, were framed as domestic terrorists or insurrectionists. Meanwhile, a substantial amount of us had loyally served our country. So it's an interesting dichotomy between the lives we actually lived before January 6th and the way we were portrayed after the fact.
As you say that, and you make the word ist, and I've made jokes throughout this period, mostly after DC, when I can come down from the horrors of the DC jail, and you get in the Federal Bureau of Prisons and kind of deal with a whole new set of horrors. At that time, it's kind of like you come down and you're trying to recover. And I always tell myself, I'm going to change my name to ist, because you put an ist at the end of it, and that's exactly what they labeled every single one of us. A white supremacist, a racist, a left or right-wing military extremist, domestic terrorist, insurrectionist. You put an ist in it, and that's what they called us. That's exactly what they labeled us as. So you're absolutely correct when you say that this dichotomy is that's how they treated us, on all aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even worse, some of us were Texans. That doesn't even have an ist.
Southernist.
I disavow.
Disavow.
Mr. Microchip, in terms of January 6th, we're going to go through the day itself and what actually happened. But, I always, even even among those of us who were in the DC jail, I recall there were differences in why some people were actually there that day. A lot of people were there to protest the election. Some were just there to support the president. Some people were there to protest COVID-19 lockdowns.
Yeah,
Some
absolutely.
people, there were a myriad of reasons people were down there. And so, obviously, the narrative is that we were there as part of a monolith to topple democracy. But the truth is that not everybody was even there for the same political reasons. Would you mind going into what was your actual motivation for going to Washington on January 6th?
Well, I think I go back and let's go back a little bit further than that, back to the 2015-16, and why the support of Trump came. So, as they say that when men or women are middle aged, they kind of pay more attention to politics. And as you say, I was in the chip guy. I was in the semiconductor industry, and Trump, during that time before Trump, is I had firsthand knowledge of us shipping our technology overseas to China. Where we're doing a certain amount of it, and then we have to ship the rest of it to China, and then they're taking it. So in order for us that's the only way we could compete in the industry worldwide. So when Trump came in, he's talking about make America first, bring manufacturing back to the United States. I had direct, firsthand, 20 years experience from 1996 into 2016, just seeing year after year, more and more and more and more of our products going overseas to China. And the only way we could survive was we had metrics of saying, okay, we're going to manufacture this product, and we have to get it done for, say, $1,000 a wafer. That's my company's cost from start to finish. It needs to cost them $1,000 per wafer, and you're talking hundreds of thousands of wafers, but that's the only way we could compete with China. So when you do that, you work longer hours. You have 5S programs. You're trying to find ways to work in lean manufacturing, and there's good things about lean manufacturing, but there's also really bad things. Bad things happen, and you can't compete. People lose their jobs. The industry goes up and down. So when Trump came along, it really piqued my interest of, man, I'm really going to pay attention to this because America first. And I'm the person that believes if you have a map of the United States, you put a bubble around it. Anybody that is representing the United States from the inside wants to bust that bubble and give our stuff away or send our manufacturing away. I don't want to support them, because it directly affects me. You're at that age of your life where I got to worry about my kids in college and my retirement. And then also that bubble's around there, and anybody that's on the outside wants to poke that bubble and bust it and put their stuff in here that takes away from the American manufacturing. So I am definitely in the industry of manufacturing, and Trump was America first to bring it back. So I totally believed in that, and I was an avid supporter on that. I could care less at some point in my life if the person on the left was doing a certain thing or the person on the right was believing a certain thing. To me, it's about policy. It's about policy. Because, we saw how 8 years of one side was doing, and it just destroyed us even then. So I really look forward to Trump coming into 2016. And when he won the election and took office in 2017, one of his first things he did is he brought all the CEOs from all the major chip manufacturers to the Oval Office and said, we're bringing it back. And got commitments from these billion-dollar companies to build billion-dollar factories back in the United States. And that was directly impacting me and my life. And that whole time, and Trump was working that. Those are things in the background, outside of if he had the support from everybody, to do that, make America great again. To me, that's what it meant. It meant it was manufacturing. That was my key intake to that. So that carries over into the whole election of 2020. You're sitting there like, man, this has been really good. We're doing good in my industry. You see it, that there's positive metrics that are happening because Trump's in office, and you feel it. You take it home every week. Your paychecks are better. And then when you start seeing the whole change of the whole campaigning up into 2020 with the COVID and how things changed and how it just drastically disappeared in an instant, and to fix that. And then coming out of that, coming out of COVID into the manufacturing and watching the other side, Biden and all that, it's like there's no way that can happen. We have to have Trump in there. And then when you just start seeing the election, the whole process, everybody knows that I honestly believe that the election was not a free election. I believe that there was tampering, and I do believe that, the whole thing about January 6th was to send it back to the states. And, I really wasn't planning up until the last few days to even go to January 6th. I took off a day early at work, worked a 12-hour shift at night, got in my car, and drove to D.C. So that's probably like the same thing that most people did, like you, right?
Yeah, I had actually been denied. I had actually been denied a day off. I wanted to switch my work schedule with a coworker so I could go down to DC and have the day off because I worked overnights. So I got denied. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to miss this. This is my last chance to see. Because from my perspective, this was either going to be the last speech that President Trump would give in his only term, or he'd pull a rabbit out of his hat, maybe, and this would be the beginning of his second term. And so I thought that this was going to be a historical day. That's why I went there in a suit. I went there thinking it was just going to be, this historic day when it came to the presidency of President Trump. I got off of my overnight shift. I threw on my suit and I blasted down the road from New Jersey to DC for 4 hours, banging energy drinks so I could make it through the day. I had no expectation it was even going to be a protest at the Capitol. I thought it was just going to be at the Ellipse. So yeah.
Totally agree with you. I'm totally. As you said, the same thing there is, I left Dallas at about 7:30 in the morning on a Tuesday after working a 12-hour shift graveyard. I worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then getting in that truck and had a backpack that had a few change of clothes, your shit shower, shaving gear, stuff that I carry with me anywhere I go. This was my bag, And got in the truck, and like you said, I pounded a bunch of Celsius drinks and energy drinks, and Lord, I know it'll come about Memphis time. I called my dad. He's like, man, just turn around, Dan. You're tired. You just worked. But I drove 20 hours to get there at 4 in the morning. Same thing. I thought it was going to be history. Why are you going? Because that is historical. This is, this is the chance to right the wrongs that have happened over the last 4 years and during the election. That's what I thought. And by the speech, it was everybody else has had their moment of history in D.C., right? The big marches, the historical civil rights, you had the pink hats, everybody had their chance. And I'd seen the rallies from, was it November, December, prior to the January 6th, they had a couple rallies there before.
Right.
And I was like, man, I can't miss it. Like you said, it's the last time. This is it, Last election, this is it. At least, I want to hear him before he leaves and go support the 135 congressmen and 8 senators that were going to contest the Electoral College and send it back to the states. That was January 6th. Didn't even know the Capitol was going to be a thing until, right in the middle of the speech, we're all going to walk down there peacefully, be heard. And at that point, you're in the crowd. You were there. Everybody's like, did he just say he's walking? Well, he's walking with us? Well, we're going to walk? And you just watch. Literally half the people from the monument up to the Eclipse just started mingling, just started taking off. And I kind of followed the crowd.
Yeah.
Down at the Capitol.
That was going to be my next, question really, is like, I have, even looking back on my phone, I'm recording part of President Trump's speech, and you can hear someone right behind me saying there's some sort of a march going on. You could see entire city blocks were just full of people leaving the Ellipse area and heading towards the Capitol. So with that, I think there's no better way to get an understanding of what someone's day was like than to just have them tell it. Can you tell, from start to finish, can you tell us what the day of January 6th was actually like from your perspective?
So like I said, I got in really late in the morning at 4 o'clock. So, once I woke back up, I went down to the lobby, grabbed a fruit cup with some fresh fruit, a couple soda water, and I got to Reagan and tried to figure out how to get to there. And there was a guy that was there that was trying to help people figure out what ticket to buy for the day pass for the Metro. And I ended up kind of hanging with him for a little while. We actually walked down together. So I kind of hung with him until we actually got to the Capitol. It was just he's an Army vet. And we just kind of hung out and watched that together and walked down there together and kind of lost each other within the first minutes of the Capitol happening. But as you say, when people just mass crowds of people walking, where I was at, I never made it back as far to the monument to see down the mall. So I had no clue where the Capitol was with reference to where I was. I was close to the screens where the porta potties were. I was kind of probably 50, 60 yards back from that toward the monument. And when the crowd left, I just kind of went down Main Street, I think it's Constitution, and just followed the crowd. It's funny, as we made it to, I think it was 15th Street to 14th Street, this huge, just big platoon of bicycle cops just goes racing by, right through the crowd, hitting people and trying to get through. And they were in a hurry. I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, heck, they're going to set up a path. That's where Trump's going. So a lot of people made a detour right. But they ended up going in this group of cops ended up going down and stopping a counter-protest fight between Trump supporters and what I had later heard in some of the discovery that came out, that there was a group of Antifa people down there that were kind of on the south part of not coming up. The police were very adamant about keeping these two groups separated, and it was, in their mind, in the discovery, it was Antifa messing with Trump supporters. South on 14th Street or something like that. So we kind of went that way, and I saw the mall. I was like, oh, there's the Capitol. So I make a left turn on the mall, and we just start walking. I actually stopped and bought a T-shirt from a T-shirt vendor because my daughter was just getting in the Air Force at that time. And I bought a T-shirt that says, heroes don't wear capes, they wear dog tags. I bought her one and me one because, she's now wearing dog tags, and I'm a veteran. So, you kind of just mingle down there. Towards the crowd, you follow in the crowd, right? So as we make it down, it's a pretty far walk from the monument down to the Capitol. It doesn't look that far, but it's a good walk. I want to say it's something's like a mile and a half, or
it's about a couple miles.
Yeah. So when you're walking there, you just kind of slowly walking. You're observing people, and you're seeing guys over here with skateboards and hockey sticks, and I'm thinking, man, those guys, what would you bring a hockey stick to a rally or a skateboard or and I'm thinking, well, I don't know what they are, Of course you're thinking, well, maybe those are the guys Antifa dressed as Trump supporters, because that was a thing. Everybody said, prior to going there, be careful, because the Antifa mixed with the crowd, and they're going to go after people. So I finally get down to the reflection pool. I'm on the south side of the pool, the reflection pond, I guess. And, that's probably close to 1 o'clock, I guess. As you make your way on the Capitol grounds, they got the two walkways that kind of angle into the Lower West Terrace. From where the Peace Circle was to where the Garfield Monument was. They kind of both go into the Capitol. While I was on the south side, and right before I got there was a motorcycle cop just talking with people, not telling them to stop. He's just talking with them and letting people go right by him and on the Capitol grounds, and he just burns off and takes off. And a couple seconds later, I go right by where he was and kind of just follow people under the grass and walking towards the Lower West Terrace in the grass area, right in the middle. And by the time I got there was no signs. There was no bike racks saying closed, do not enter. There was nothing. There wasn't even cops standing there saying stop. It was just people walking. And as further you get up to the Lower West Terrace, there's no signage there. Obviously, at some point, watching videos and stuff later on, all that shit was ripped down. There was nothing that people saw. And I made it to the Lower West Terrace.
So it's safe to say then, you kind of already just said this, but just to be perfectly clear, you, myself, a lot of us kind of just poured into an area, not realizing that before we showed up that there was fencing that had signs that said restricted area, or there were these, let's say, these piecemeal bike rack perimeters that got knocked over. Thousands of us poured in, no idea we weren't supposed to be there.
Absolutely, and you would think that there'd be presence of police or a barrier. There was nothing. So when the police are gone and the barriers aren't there and people are walking on, you just, hey, okay, this is cool. We're walking. This is not a problem because nobody's stopping us, and there's no audible warnings. There's nobody saying, stop, turn around. There was nothing. It was just people walking. So like you said, just kind of followed around, tagged along. And, there's that wall between the grass. And I remember sitting up on that wall climbed up on the little wall there, standing there. I remember the one guy climbing the scaffolding, and they tackled him. And everybody's kind of like laughing that this guy's climbed the scaffolding. It's like 60-foot high scaffolding. This guy's climbing it, and the cops are climbing behind him and running around trying to get him, and they got him. So. I remember that was the first thing I kind of remember as far as like the scene on the Lower West Terrace that caught my attention.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask you this too. Just thinking about this, so there are so many different perspectives, especially because some people were closer towards the front, some people were in the back, some people were in the back, they got closer to the front. I've heard so many different perspectives for people who would say, I never even saw any violence and I was there for a long time. I myself, like looking at my phone video, I must have I was on the West Terrace for some time, and the video shows we were singing God Bless America. We were chanting Christ is
National
King.
Anthem, yeah.
We were doing all this, and it was only at a certain point that, I can say there was a certain point where things escalated. And it seemed from my perspective that the police were attacking the crowds. But, you said you were on that end where that dude was on the scaffold. They, I guess,
yes.
got taken down after that.
So go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, from your perspective, what was, if you could just try to evaluate, what was going on? Because I wasn't on the side you were on. I know there's a point where things escalated. We'll get to that. But, really, what really did it feel like? Did it initially feel, when you got to that point, did it feel like it was a riot, or did it just feel like there was a couple people maybe causing some issues, but in general, there still wasn't really an issue that you would call a riot? How did it build up?
So from my line of sight, I'm standing on this maybe 3-foot wall, of the Lower West Terrace, from the grass to the Lower West Terrace. There's like a 3-foot little wall. I'm up there standing there, and I remember trying to get my phone. I wanted to get videos, but I don't know why. I charged my phone, but that walk from the ellipse area down to the Capitol, I swear to God that my phone drained like 70% of it had just dumped. The battery was zapped. And I was like, man, I couldn't record video because, when your phone gets so low, it won't do it. And I remember trying to record, and I'm getting frustrated, but everybody's like, they're chanting, they're singing, and it was a great feeling. People were helping people over the wall, but then there was a change. You could almost hear the pitch and the change in the crowd, and it caught my attention. So I kind of look up, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? And it's way up by the Lower West Terrace, way, way forward, the front line, and you see like a little scuffle break out. Between, and I can only see the backside, and I can't see very, very well from there, but I saw that the crowd was, and the police kind of did a little small surging over to the furthest south on the Lower West Terrace you could get before you climbed up into the scaffolding. All right, there's the police, the Capitol Police had a line. They had a line formed there, and there was no bike racks, and there was no violence, And I remember it wasn't until later that what caught my attention and why that started was everybody was standing peacefully, like 2 feet away from the police, no barriers between them, and everybody's just talking. But what happened was later that I found out, as I'm observing from this, why that little shuffle and like a wave of people just kind of motioning back and forth. So, there's some shoving going on between cops to crowd to cops. Well, there was a Capitol Police who jumped down off this wall and went and pushed one of the protesters that just was sitting on the stairs and pushed him backwards, and he kind of almost fell down back off these little stairs. And then when he did that, that guy had regathered himself and came back and pushed the cop back. And of course, that started that, and that's what I saw. But it wasn't shortly after that as I'm watching that happen, I looked to my left, and you know where they actually do the hand raising for the inauguration. It's almost like a bay window type thing up there at the top, where they stand on that little, I don't even know how you call it. It's just it protrudes out on that middle West Terrace, where they actually raise the hand and then they do this swearing in. Well, at that point, I had seen cops show up with shields and what I could visibly see as a paintball gun, because it had the little hopper on top. But next to that, I saw what appeared to me at that moment looked like an M4 with no rail on top, just an M4 with the, and it looked like from where I saw that had a suppressor at the end of it, right? And then you just start hearing it sounds to me just like suppressed rounds coming out of a suppressed M4, shooting from an elevator position down in the crowd. And when that happened, man, just the whole crowd went nuts. And I was like, and I jumped off the wall, and I don't know why, but I just went. I went to that area. And, of course, that's just what you do. You go to the area, right? I mean, I didn't even have a second thought about it. I just literally, I just dropped my, phone and put it in the body, and I went in. And I remember making my way through the crowd, and by the time I get there, there's a crowd of people standing there, and very emphatically, I take a step up, like a 2 foot up, and I kind of have elevator position over what's happened down here. What had come to find out, I thought what was this M4 shooting down the crowd. So when I get there, and I look to my left, there's a guy just sitting there saying, "You just shot an unarmed civilian. You shot an unarmed civilian." He's pointing towards his face. Like, you just shot somebody right here. And I'm like, I start freaking out because there's blood everywhere. And I'm thinking they just shot with suppressed M4, a protester for nothing. There was no warning. There was no, this is illegal, assembly, disperse now or we will use it. Nothing happened. They just started shooting at the crowd. And I thought it was live rounds because, later to find out it was a FN 303 rubber bullet / hard in the what looked like suppressor from my point of view, my line of sight ahead, ended up being a high pressure air container, like a air tank.
I've heard different things. I've heard that that there were rubber bullets, but if the person who was shot in the face is, I think, Joshua Black.
Joshua Black. I found later on it was Joshua Black.
I believe I saw an interview where he said it was a plastic round, but all the same, yeah, I believe it went pretty clearly through his cheek.
It went through his cheek, and I'd later find out it was his cheek, and then ruptured his tongue.
Yes, and he was, I believe he was also denied proper care in the weeks after that. But it's pretty noticeable how much red is on the ground in that area in terms of blood.
As you say, it was everywhere. I saw it, and I'm thinking, now I'm ejecting myself at the front line of the Capitol Police that didn't do it because the guys have shot. But now you see the panic in their face because the panic in our face, right? So it was what in the hell are you guys doing? F you just shot an unarmed civilian, tell them to stop. And I'm pointing up at there, and I'm pointing up and F you, and you just shot an unarmed civilian. I'm thinking the guy's just been shot and dead. And when I made a comment later on was, hey, there was a scuffle broken. They shot somebody in the face, and I thought, I have to come back to this. One person was shot in the neck that day. We all know who that was. It was Ashley Babbitt. I didn't know who this was down here. I just knew somebody was shot. So I just assumed they just shot a civilian, and they're fighting over this person who had been shot. I think Ryan Sampson was there. There was a couple other guys there, but they were pulling this person, I guess Joshua Black, that I didn't know at the time. All I could see was them hovering over in the body, pulling them, and a big scuffle broke out. And they kept shooting again. They started shooting again down on us into the crowd. And I remember literally grabbing a person who was in front of me, between me and a Capitol Police line, and they were shooting at him. And I grabbed him and moved him around, kind of out of the way from getting shot, almost behind me. And I'm over there yelling at the police, "You just shot on civilian, tell them to effing stop, fucking stop," excuse my language, but I just, and then it just kind of died out. I guess Josh Black, who had been shot, had been gathered by the people he came with, or the crowd had won that battle of fighting over him. The Capitol Police wanted him. They don't know what to do, whatever, but the crowd's like, no, he's with us, or they're with us. So just keep that in mind as I tell my story later on that, I made a comment later on that I saw somebody get shot. All right. That's a big thing because they use this against me. So, and as you're sitting there, you see that, and then it kind of just fizzles out, and you had any questions about that one, but, so you knew Joshua Black, so you kind of understood, a little bit about that.
Yeah, a lot of people have testified that, and I don't necessarily mean in a legal sense, but a lot of people who were in that area have basically given a similar story that what really kicked things off on the West Terrace, ignoring that there were the initial breaches around the perimeter, what really sort of escalated things from a, let's say, unauthorized protest into a riot was really the usage of armaments against the crowd. And one of the first instances of that, of course, was the issue with shooting black in the face.
Yeah,
Um,
and you got to remember, like anybody who's listening to this, picture yourself in a crowd where it's shoulder to shoulder, right? And you have police on an elevated position about 15 to 25 feet, 15 to 20 feet above you in the air, shooting down. What's the only thing they can hit when they hit a crowd? It's a face, it's an eye, it's a neck, it's a shoulder. That's the only thing available. And it was a very clear shot that this guy had, in bus, like they're sighting on this little weapon he had, and he was only 2 inches away from knocking his eye out and possibly in the temple and having a kill shot on that. That's literally how realistic it is. That those guys were just non-discriminately fired down on a crowd with what's supposed to be less lethal weapons if you use them correctly. But if you use them the way they were shooting lethal weapons and acting with lethality on the crowd. And yes, absolutely, the crowd was upset because they didn't do anything.
yes, I mean, not for nothing, but regardless of what any weapon is rated as, if it's drawing substantial amounts of blood, it's going to get a reaction from a nonviolent crowd.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so, so you're there, you witness this. It escalates. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Maybe there's incompetence. Maybe there's malice from the police. But you say that things fizzle out. So take us from there. Obviously, obviously, the whole day didn't fizzle out right after that because, of
No.
course, things kind of escalated, then they fizzled and they escalated. There were kind of different phases depending on where you were. I would say
Mm-hmm.
probably most of the quote unquote violence, most of it probably happened in very specific areas at very specific times. So you said it fizzled out. Take us from that point. What really what happens from your perspective then?
So I'm standing there, and as I kind of moved that guy out of the way of being shot and kind of like interject myself between him and what's going on, like I say, fizzles out. The battle of one of or who was going to get what we now know as Joshua Black went to the crowd side, and the crowd kind of was walking away. So it's like I'm sitting there staring there. I grab my phone. I'm actually trying to get a picture of the blood, but I can't. So I kind of look around, and at that point is the exact moment that Metropolitan Police Department shows up. And they come down from the scaffolding, and it's just a little bit further, just a few feet from where I'm at. They're starting to push bike racks. Behind the bike racks, they're starting to push ground. But before they did that, as I'm literally stepping off this little raised platform, I look to my left, and all I see was this big stream of like just pepper spray, and I seen the little bottles of pepper spray, with the thumb drive pepper sprays,
Mm.
and I'm just looking like, holy crap, man! They're just spraying this. They're spraying anybody and everybody for no reason, and I'm like, I'm making very clear decisions. Like I'm not going there. I went and made a real long path, kind of around from everybody. But I'm watching the whole time. And as I'm watching, I'm just like going, man, they just shot people. They're shooting people. They're doing this. And you don't know there's a difference between Capitol Police and MPD at that time. I didn't know that there was a difference. I just knew more police had showed up. And these guys had bike helmets on and yellow jackets. So, but they're coming, and they're just spraying just non-discriminating. The crowd is yelling at them again. So now the crowd's going, what in the F are you doing? You're spraying us. We haven't done anything. Stop spraying. And I walked my way around, and you'd mentioned before in the past that you'd seen a video of me kind of making that loop around, and coming to a set of stairs where I kind of stopped, and this Capitol Police who's moving the bike rack, I looked at him like, man, you guys should be ashamed of yourselves, and he kind of just tells me, the F you, get the F out of here, and shoves me, kind of gives me a good shove off the top of the stairs. And I'm like, I'm leaving. I think you mentioned that to me before.
Yeah, from my perspective, it appears to be from a cell phone video that I can only assume came from cops that were on one of the higher, one of the higher levels of the building. But it seems clear as day to me that you're standing there, and almost just to be a dick, the cop just kind of shoves you.
Yeah, yeah. And he's like, "Get that out of here." And I'm like, because I just said, you guys should be ashamed of yourselves, because what they were doing in the crowd and what I just witnessed, and I kind of went back off into the crowd, and stayed there for, a few minutes, and kind of, as I kind of made my way to the crowd, you remember I told you I'd walked to the Capitol with somebody, but I kind of lost it when I left the wall. I never knew where that person was. I kind of really found him one time after that, but I went back to where I had last seen that person. But I never found him. So I kind of just was walking around. So whenever I didn't see him, I kind of came back and looked further south where the doors were coming from the scaffolding. And that's when I'm kind of standing there, and I had my phone, and I was like, well, man, let me plug my portable charger in with a cable that's out of my backpack. So I pulled the cable that was wrong for that, and I plugged it into my phone. So the phone's having a cable that goes to my backpack. And I have it in there, and I try to get this picture. And the reason I was standing there is because there's another Jan 6 guy walking up and down the steps. Later to find out it was Jose Padilla, and he's walking by these cops. Graziano, if I remember right, later on. He's walking, and and he's kind of the same sentiment I was. But you guys should be ashamed of yourselves. You guys what you're doing as traitors. You guys are being traitors. What are you doing? And as he's walking by it, he's on the concrete steps, and the cop pushes him. So normally, if you're in an elevated position, somebody's pushing you off, you don't want to go, you inherently, naturally just kind of grab at the arm that's pushing you. So he did that, and they shoved him even harder, and he went tumbling backwards really hard down the back of the stairs. And that was the first time I'm like, fuck, these guys are going, they don't give a shit. They're hurting people, and they are intent on hurting people. And I remember trying to get that video or trying to get that picture. So that's my first experience. I kind of hung out there for a while. It wasn't shortly after that I'm standing there, and there's a guy with a flag kind of further down. I'm just standing there by the railing. I kind of walked myself up, and I'm looking from where I was standing, still 40 yards away. You could still see all the blood back behind this line of officers. These were Capitol Police. And I'm talking to this, standing there, and this guy looked like he was 18. I just couldn't believe how young this Capitol Police officer looked. And he was, shaking. He was just, his hand was shaking. He had a hip holster on a leg holster on his right side, and his hand was just right there, shaking. And he wanted to pull. It was you could just tell he was nervous. And I'm like, dude, don't do that. You don't want to do that. And there was another veteran guy next to me. He goes, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. We're not here for that. So you just kind of see this group of people who, one, they don't de-escalate. Two, half of them aren't trained. And three, none of them have any de-escalation of the situation or themselves, how to calm themselves down. They just weren't trained properly, man. And all they saw was their upper people. Well, I want to get back to one point. Whenever I saw them pepper spray and stuff, later on, you start looking at areas you're at and you're watching footage. And there's a lot of stories to be told that we'll get to about that later on, about who was doing that. So, as you're standing there, that was 120-something, 127. And I disappeared. I was kind of walking up and down, and I reappeared 140. But I remember standing there. And this was, I don't know if you saw the video where the big Trump sign was kind of coming across the crowd.
Yeah.
That on wheels. When I was standing there, and I remember as one of the police officers had sprayed the big super soaker by the media stand. And I remember standing there, and just because the wind was blowing so hard, I got the whole side of my face, side of my glasses, in my eyes. I just got blasted with this big spray from 15 or 20 feet away of their super soaker that just hit the whole side of my face and into the side of my eye. And I remember ducking down, oh my gosh, trying to clear my eye out. I kind of just got on my knee. And at that time, the big sign had come up, right? And there was another person who had got sprayed, right? If I remember right, just as the sign passes over me, I stand back up, and this person I watch goes up there, and remember the cops are spraying everybody, and he goes and reaches for the side of his hip and tries to pull out his own little spray bottle, and is like, stop spraying, when they just, 5 guys just sprayed the hell out of him. He takes off, and I see this. So I had acquired a container of spray coming onto the Capitol grounds. There's a video of me walking on the Capitol grounds and looking to the right. It's just sitting there, and I was kind of like, what the hell is that? I actually go up and grab it. So, and I kind of just grab it and kind of catch back up with the person I was walking with. So I had acquired a container, and not knowing what it was, I never even opened it up. I just had a container. It was always said it was aerosol. They want to say bear spray, whatever. I never knew what it was. I just knew it was an aerosol can. So I went up, and that's when I'm like, look, man, you just keep spraying. Spray us again, I'm going to spray you back. I dare you. Keep doing what you're doing. And it was me trying to, man, what you're doing is not right. And as it's escalating, you're seeing more and more go on. You want to say stop. And that was the comment you made where, I said, hey, if you spray us again, I'm going to spray you back. And that was that point. And that was like 1:40 p.m.
Yeah, and that's, that it's important for people to understand too, like the reason I even know about that quote is because it's so prevalent in the way the reporting was about your conduct. And it's important for people who were not there to understand that when they describe people's behavior that day, they not only do they kind of they obviously frame it more aggressive than it actually was. So they try to turn everybody into a pre-planning insurrectionist or whatever. Yeah, they suggest that everybody went there with a certain intent, that they planned ahead of time. But even when they actually have dialogue or quotations, it's manipulated language. And so it's like when you read the full quotes, it's pretty clear you're talking about spraying back in retaliation for having already been sprayed.
Yes, and watching everybody else get sprayed. Defense of others, they just,
this is similar to with Julian Cater. It's interesting because I told you this before, but for those that aren't aware, I found exculpatory evidence, CCTV, that shows that the cops were spraying the crowd he was in first, and he sprayed after he was already soaked, and it gets in under the radar. Some of the quotes in his own case are, they just fucking sprayed me. And It's just, well, what does that tell you about people's intent and what actually led up to the alleged assaults on law enforcement? And so it's a similar thing with you, where you can, if you know what to look for, it's pretty clear as day. Just reading the quote attributed to you makes it clear you're upset because the crowd is being attacked by the cops, and you could say that you're threatening retaliation, but that would still indicate that something preceded that. And that just never makes its way into the coverage. It never makes its way. There's never any inquiry. There's no sense of curiosity on the part of the government, nor on the part of the press, in how they cover these cases. And especially in cases like yours, where there's an alleged, again, assault on law enforcement or mace. You could have brought a gun, but instead there's mace, or in maybe someone else's case, there's a flagpole or something like that. And it's just like, well,
PVC flagpole that they bought at the rally.
How did it get to this point?
They were selling the flags on the PVC poles.
Right. And yet, this is the kind of pre-planning or assault on law enforcement that we're supposed to equate with an insurrection. It makes no sense, but it really had to be like, I have to focus on that too. It's just like, in terms of the dialogue, even someone who doesn't, I would, again, maybe I'm giving too much credit to humanity, but I would think that anybody who looks at the actual text in these quotations, in these claims attributed to people from that day, I would think a rational person would read the words and think, well, what's the context here? Because it seems like there's a little bit being left out. But yeah, that's what really made that quote stand out. Is just, it's pretty clear that there was a build up to it, and the threats of spraying clearly is resulting from behavior aimed towards you in the crowd. And
Yeah.
and then there were other quotations as well. I don't know if you could provide some more insight on that. One of the big ones is attributed to you is the claim, oh, I'm something along the lines of I got about 15 of them or something like that, which I assume is in reference to spraying cops in retaliation to the very thing you just talked about.
So actually the very thing, no, that was at 140 when I did that, right? Didn't spray anybody there. So you gotta remember my events of the day, that quote was taken at the hotel after all the events of the day and trying to process my mind. So I can give you very clearly that little interview at the hotel that I did not know was being recorded or anything. But that was at 140 when I did that. And after that, I kind of played Mr. Obvious. I had taken, I kind of went from there and I moved more towards the media tower, maybe 20, 40 feet between where that incident happened, and kind of migrated towards the media tower. It's right there on the corner. And I remember after watching videos and stuff, not knowing who he was, but ended up being Ray Epps was walking up and down that corner of that line, right? And I stood there and talked to this blonde girl for a minute, just for a quick second, as Ray Epps was walking down towards where I just come from, up there on that front line in front of the cops. I kind of moved from there, and I moved probably another 15 feet towards the Capitol, but almost like right in front of the media tower, the little bike racks there. And at that point, I become Mr. Obvious. I'm seeing what's going on. I remember seeing a sergeant. I'm like, Sergeant Sick, because I want to try to get this. The sergeants were the guy behind the line officers, and it was directing people. And you could tell this was a very calm area. Nothing was going on. And Sergeant Sick was kind of going back, checking up and down on his people, and I wanted to get his attention, to tell him, like, man, you need to tell these guys to stop spraying. When you hear me sit there and say, Sergeant Sick, I try to call him, but he doesn't. He looks at me, but he doesn't respond. He just keeps on walking. So I'm standing there, and there's crowd people. I think we sing the national anthem. And I make a comment also that they quoted on, where I say, they're going to end up having to lock the fucking Mr. Caldwell says lock the fucking doors. Yes, because when you're standing there, and I don't even remember watching videos or from your own, personal experience of watching, there was doors that went from the Lower West Terrace up to the inauguration stage, right? There's two doors that were access to go up, right? And that's where the cops finally egressed at the very end. But there's cops going up and down. I'm just thinking, man, they need to lock those doors, And I remember making a comment, they would have to call the National Guard. You guys need to call the National Guard. You better lock the doors. And as I'm sitting there and I see this super soaker, again, the damn super soakers were nonstop. And I see to my left, and I'm making a comment, and they use this quote again, as you're saying, that they quote something, but they don't give you the full perspective of it. So they quote me saying, "Yep, that's right. Just fucking pepper spray them all." Right, and that's where they stop it. And I did say that, very clearly said that. But that's when an officer or two officers came over their own officers with their big super soakers, kind of holding them above their head and above the officers' heads, and just spraying the crowd from behind a line of officers. And I'm watching that, and you can see it on the cameras from you can time it up and sync it up from the camera from the dome, that 944 camera, 0944. You see the second I say that, where I'm looking is I'm making comments under my breath, kind of, yep, just a non-Mr. Obvious, well, that'll fucking work, just fucking pepper spray them all. And that was about the cops spraying the crowd like that's really going to work. It's not working, you're just pissing them off. I was like, yep, that's really going to work, fucking pepper spray them all. Well, they only put, Mr. Caldwell said pepper spray them all. Well, that was the cops spraying the crowd, and the video shows that, but they don't say that, they don't show that. Again, it's the cops spraying 60 people when they could have just grabbed one person if that person was causing an issue and pulled them over the bike rack. You get the one person, you don't spray the 60 behind everybody. But they just weren't trained because, it's the sergeants, that's who was doing it. It was the people who should have known better.
It's interesting too, when you think about it, there are people who think that it was a setup, which I think there is evidence for that. And so there are people who think that the Capitol Police, or maybe it's the Metro Police, or both, were trying to incite a riot. There are those who would say and I think there's evidences of this as well, as you alluded to, that a lot of these officers were incompetent and poorly trained. They're actually, and in reference to what you just said, there is of course body camera footage. I'm sure you've seen it as well, where officers were even saying for every one we hit, we piss off 10 more.
I can give you quotes to that specifically. I remember that video. I think when we watched it, I'm the one who kind of brought it out of the cell into the pod, where it was Edwards saying that, sitting along with Daniel Tao, the worst person that day from the Metropolitan Police Department, where they're talking to Chief, I forget what's his name, but he comes on and is like, well, we've already tried paying compliance. That's not working. Well, one, that was at 1:40 something p.m. So you've already tried pain compliance, and that means less lethal weapon. Pepper spray, rubber bullets, pepper balls, sting balls, flashbangs, CS gas canisters. You've tried all this other stuff, and it's not working. Pain compliance isn't working. And another one says, we go after one, we piss 10 of them off. The cops knew what they were doing was wrong, and it wasn't working. That was Edwards who said that. Edwards was, if I go back and look at all the officers and follow the body cams like I have hundreds of hours of done, Edwards was the only one, I honestly think, that was trained properly and had any restraint. When he made that comment, and he was the sergeant in charge of the DSO, the Tara Tyndalls, the Chrismans, the Daniel Taos. He was the one that was in charge of all those people that had the less lethal, the 40 millimeters, and all the munitions. He was the lead for that guy. That was him, and he's saying that to the chief.
Yeah, and this is, and I can corroborate, this is essentially what incited me to anger as well. I wasn't quite where you were. I was more towards the Northwest scaffolding, but, as I said before, I was, happy to chant and, sing and all that, but flashbangs started coming my way. We started getting sprayed in my direction. And what's interesting too is, in terms of the incompetence, if it was incompetence, you can hear on a lot of these body cameras that there are actually officers being told to stop spraying because of the blowback from the wind, because the wind was in their direction. A lot of their injuries were sustained because of their own actions. They were actually spraying each other.
Yes.
After being told not to, after being told to stop. And so, yeah, there's I'm not sure what the ratio is, or what percentage of the escalation was incompetence versus malice, or maybe a combination of both.
Definitely both.
Yeah.
Definitely both. Because as I say that, and you heard about what they would talk about, that your mindset was with this, and I heard this a lot. I heard it so many times in jail when the judges would come back from their bond hearings or the status hearings, and there's, I'm going to trial, I'm going to fight this, and I kept hearing the thing word mens rea. What was your mindset at the time that you did what you did? Leading up to that, what was your mindset? In their mind, it was, we had a mindset, even showing up on Capitol, that we were going to attack the police and breach the Capitol and overthrow this country. That was the mens rea that they say in the Latin terms, whatever the heck it is, that we all had.
The guilty mind, yeah.
The guilty mind right off the get-go before you even showed up on the Capitol grounds. Totally not it. They're long. That's a lie. That's the biggest lie. That's what kept us in solitary confinement in the D.C. jail for 2 years without trial. Was that stuff right there that the judge would say and the prosecutor would say, you couldn't do anything about it because in the interest of justice, we're going to keep you in here and see you back again in 60 to 90 days. In the interest of justice, you had to waive your rights to speedy trial because you did have discovery and you wanted to fight it. So they knew what they were doing. So it's funny as you say the mens rea, and as I say that, the mindset and the training. One of the guys that was on my list of body cams that showed me one night or one day throughout that day was an officer named Laporte. He showed up with CDU 64. If you look at the way the cops showed up for the Metropolitan, it was 64, 54, 74. Those three units, the first thing that showed up. Well, I've watched every 50-something people in that platoon, every one of them's body cam. But not for 2 hours. There's 100 hours of body cam right there that I've watched, probably took notes of. But one that caught my mind, and I had to beat on his body cam later, that's why I went and looked at it. It's like, well, this guy said they got me on his body camera somewhere and let me watch it. Well, this guy's walking. A minute 40 to him hitting that start button on the body cam. You can hear them all joking around. They're all smoking, joking. They're laughing, walking up the Capitol. And he's like, man, I'm ready to fight. And the guy right next to him was like, facts. So if you want to talk about my imagery of coming into the Capitol, it wasn't about fighting. It was about, I'm protesting. I want to support the congressmen and senators. I want them to know I'm out here and that they need to stand fast and send us back to the States. Well, the imagery for the other people, the cops, was, I'm ready to fight, and the other one says facts. So that wasn't me. That was them. But I'm the criminal.
Yes, and also in terms of like negligence, and again, I always make there's another body camera. I don't know if you recall this one. I believe one of those bike cops, maybe not from that same unit, but there's a body camera from some bike cops. They're above the terrace, so they're not quite down where you were, but so they're grouped together, and an officer says to the others, man, they set us up. They set us up. And yep, exactly. The other one says, absolutely. So, and it's like,
we shouldn't even be here.
Who set them up? Yeah, it's
we should have National Guard. National Guard should be here. We shouldn't be here. They set us up.
Yeah,
and absolutely, I remember that.
The Metro PD answered to Mayor Bowser, and the Capitol PD answered to Nancy Pelosi at the time. So it's just like,
and both of them denied National Guard.
Right. Who set them up? And so, yeah, I mean, I think there were multiple reasons for why it escalated. A lot of it had to do with the conduct of the police, but actually, I want to go back to something I think I heard you say earlier in terms of people in the crowd spraying. You said you wanted to come back to something in terms of who you thought was behind the spraying or something like that. Do you think that there were provocateurs inside the crowd trying to stir up the crowd?
I do, because there's certain times, when you're watching stuff, and I remember we talked about before where you had the Bohemian guy with the dreadlocks, and the guy with the skater helmet on with the blue shirt. These guys definitely either were ready to incite or, just were egging people on, because it all starts as the rack pushers and the rack pullers, right? It starts in that kind of aspect. So, we've kind of gone over my little, but there was people in the crowd that definitely I felt shouldn't have been there. I can't judge a person the way they look, but you've been around for 4 years, people who support Trump, and it doesn't look like that guy. It doesn't look like these guys who just, I don't want to judge by looks, but I've seen their actions and the way they carried themselves. They were there to incite, and they did.
Mm. Yeah, what would Scott Fairlime call it? I think Scott he called them instigators, agitators, and
motivators. Yeah, it was Jeff and Scott would have to say that. Yep. And skinny jean wearing punks that Jeff McKellar would call them, because he was definitely wearing skinny jeans. But as I was saying before, so you got me out there at the one part where I make the comment, and let's get up to the event to why I got put in jail. So I kind of went around that. Let me finish that up where I'm Mr. Obvious, and I'm like, well, that's obviously to go to work. Just fucking spray them all.
Right.
So after that, I kind of like standing up there by myself. I remember talking to two guys that were totally masked up, and I'm like, and you hear me talking about, look at the blood over there, man. I saw them shoot that person. Look at all that blood over there. Now I'm still, that should say something. Even an hour later, almost getting on an hour after that had happened, and I'd seen that I'm still distraught over the blood laying on the ground over there, and that was somebody's blood that didn't need to happen, right? And I don't know the outcome of the person. I just know they dragged him off, and that's all I know. So I'm kind of, again, trying to find the person that kind of walked to the Capitol with that I met at the train station. I'm like, well, shit, man, I'm here by myself, and I kind of walked my way down towards the south side, I guess you would say, the scaffolding, where it goes up the stairs. And, the door there. So I'm standing there, and I kind of just standing around. And as I'm standing there, there's a guy with a flag waving, the air's just blowing. It's like, you got to remember, if anybody's listening to this, the air was going from north to south. It had like a 15 to 20 knot wind. It was a lot, so the flag is just blowing. It's covering my face, but I have enough to see where there's this, I guess there had already been some crowd to cops, cops to crowd, things going on in this area probably 5-10 minutes before I had gotten in that area. Right, so there was no bike racks there. It's just the cops holding a line up top. There's some shields. There's a bike rack, and there's no cops. There's another bike rack. So it's a hodgepodge of bike racks and cops. And there's this lady wearing this blue jacket, with maroon pants on. She's holding a sign and says, "Stop the mask mandates." Something about, open the country back up. I don't remember what the sign said, but she's just sitting there holding it. And there's a cop who grabs out his pepper spray and just sprays her from like 8 inches from her face, right in her eyes with this pepper spray. Now, I've already seen hundreds of people get pepper sprayed. I've already told the cops, if you pepper spray again, I'll spray you back. That was in response to them spraying somebody else. I think my comment was that they sprayed me and I sprayed back. That was a misstatement, but they were spraying the crowd. And I assumed the crowd, I injected myself in there. Right? So when they sprayed this girl, and then the cop standing next to him, which is probably a 250-pound cop and a 105-pound woman holding a sign, now who can't see, she's standing on top of the concrete steps at the same place that Padilla was pushed down. You remember those concrete steps, right?
Yeah.
There's like 8 of them, and it's probably 4 feet in height, but falling backwards on concrete steps from from that high, it's going to hurt, and it can hurt somebody and actually kill somebody. I'm standing there, and I watch them pepper spray this girl. As soon as they pepper spray her, he blasts her down the stairs with his shield. And she's defenseless, absolutely 100% defenseless. And I just lost my shit. I ran, within a split seconds. I'm like, you see, as soon as the shield hits her, you see the body cam footage for that cop, and you see my feet come from behind this flag. You don't see my face, but you see me just instantly move when they hit her. And that's when I come up and I pull my can that I had picked up on the Capitol grounds, and I spray towards the cop that just did that. The one that sprayed her and the one that hit her down the stairs with a shield. And as soon as I spray, that spray comes out in a long stream, and then it just blows and just goes right. It never even reaches the cop that did that. So it comes out, sprays, and it just goes down the line, and there was several cops, and inherently, naturally, when I watched the video, I had sprayed left and right. So I went at the cops, the spray comes out, it goes to the right, and my hand follows the spray maybe 6 or 7 inches left and right. Trying to get these few cops right here, the 2 that hit them. And I don't even know why I went right. It's just when I followed the pepper spray, it just went left and right. But they ended up going down the line, and that's when I remember seeing, at that point, Corey, or his name, was standing there, came up with his little 40 millimeter, little less lethal device, and from about 8 feet away deployed, I guess a rubber ball round that hot like 8 or 9 rubber bullets out, hit me in my lower leg and my ankle. At that point while I was spraying, and I thought I broke my leg. And it was pretty much after that, I'm telling them to come get me. F you, come get me, come attack me. And when I made that comment that I sprayed like 15 of them, it was that comment that I sprayed, and it took them out as I sprayed, and it went down the line, and it probably got like 15. They coughed, or they backed off the line, they coughed, or they sneezed, or, it did end up tracking down the line in the wind, but not like just inherently spraying 15 people. It was the wind that caught it. The mechanic, like you said, they're spraying themselves because of the wind, and it carried it down to them. So, and then that's when I kind of I'm done. I think I broke my leg with that shot that they did, and I limp away. And I kind of stay in the area to try to recover myself because I was literally I don't think I've been in that much pain since I can't remember. It's been a long time. So, and that's shortly, from where I was at, and what responsible was them hitting that woman down the stairs. Now, if you continue, I'd walked away, but if you continue watching that body cam footage when the crowd helped pick this lady back up, they kind of stood her back on the stairs. The cop, as soon as I had turned away and he took the shield down, knowing that I guess that I wasn't spraying towards anymore, he went right back to that girl and hit her harder and knocked her down the stairs even more violently the second time. And that's when, after I left at that, the crowd went nuts. They were throwing stuff at him. They were hitting the cops, like, you're hitting an innocent woman. You just hit somebody's mom, and you cowards, and, how could you do that? Stop hitting women. And that happened. But I had missed that because I'd already limped away.
A lot of people on, just from my own recollection, I'm not sure if this is the same woman. I remember McKellop. McKellop had a similar situation.
Different woman, 15 feet to the more north of where I was at. Same line of police,
older,
same MO.
Older woman,
different
too.
Woman. Yeah, older woman, yes.
Body slammed with a riot shield.
Exactly right. And Jeff didn't respond to his response until they did that.
Right.
They sprayed her and then beat her down the stairs with a shield. So let me make you defenseless like a quarterback. You know, you can't hit a quarterback. It's defenseless, right? It's you eject the game because you hurt somebody. When you pepper spray somebody and then you hit them down with a shield backwards on concrete steps, man, you're going to hurt somebody severely. You talk about serious bodily, deadly injury. That could happen. And as a Marine and as somebody who's trained to either fight, you flight, or you freeze. And when you're a fighter, you don't know that you're doing it. It's just a natural, inherent response. You're in the Army, you know that you go to something you see, and you think that you have to defend this person. Regardless, that's immediately you have to be like, oh my God, they just did, I got to do something. I have to do something. I have to protect this person. You know, and that was it's just instant, you know, it just happened, man. It just happened.
What happens? What happens going forward? So, when do you decide to just check out from this point? At what point are you like, I'm out of here? Is it this point where your leg is you know,
yeah.
when do you decide to check out?
So after they shoot the leg, I kind of go back and I regroup, and I'm standing there, and it's like the pain is immense, you know, and I look at my ankle, and it's swollen like a freaking grapefruit. I got you've been hit with paintballs before, but these are rubber bullets. You have the blood blisters that are bleeding, you know, but it was more the bones that I just like, man, something's wrong. And I kind of started making my way back towards exactly the way I came, but instead of coming the grass, I kind of went on that long concrete walkway that had the ramping steps. You know, I kind of come out of the Capitol grounds back towards the reflection pond. Right, and I remember getting back there, and I remember turning around, taking a break because it was like hurting so bad. And I remember looking, and something crossed my mind. I'm like, this makes no effing sense, man. How is it that there's a battle going on to try to stop people from protesting down and be, you know, that stopped it from being peaceful, into this big battle between cops and the crowd and the cops, and everything like that, trying to make it like the Capitol's going to fall if they don't kill everybody down there. That was the mentality. If we don't stop this crowd, the Capitol's going to fall. I'm standing back there, and I look up, and all the way at the top, at the Capitol, there's nothing but people waving flags in crowd, and they're cheering, and they're having a good time, and I was like, well, how the hell is it they're up there, and they're battling, trying to kill people down here? It makes no sense. You know, they're already up there. What's the purpose of this continuing? You know? So, about the time that they kind of throw the CS in the crowd and it just destroys all the police lines, just falls because of their own CS that blew back on them, and the whole line falls, that's what the line, that's how that Lower West Terrace fell, was the cops CS the crowd, canister didn't make it all the way, it comes rolling back towards the cop, and it just takes out literally 200 cops. You want to see a good video footage of that? Look at Officer Caldwell's body cam. Horrible. But it shows exactly that they did that. So I'm standing there, Tim, I'm looking up there, I'm like going, man, look at all those people up there. I want to get up there, and I want to take a picture of all the people going down the mall. That's that historical picture you see from the Capitol on Inauguration Day, where from that stage or up there, all the way down the mall, there's just 1 million people. And my mindset was, I want that picture before I waddle my ass back to the hotel room. So I make my way over to the north side of the Capitol, kind of on the walkway. There's a video of me sitting down next to a SUV, recovering again. I pull out a Pepsi, I kind of take a swig of that. I get on a phone. I kind of tell family shit got out of hand. I'm going back to the hotel. And at this time, they're watching TV and like, Dad, get the hell out of there. Dan, leave. What are you doing? Just leave. I'm like, I'm leaving right now. Well, I wanted to get that picture, you know, so I worked my way up to the little walkway far north of the Capitol, right? if you're going to go to the far north of the Capitol, there's a little walkway. You come a little further west, you go south, and you're to get to that inauguration stage from the very top. When I get there, there's a line of MPD officers, and it's blocked off. I'm like, well, crap, I can't get there to get a picture. But as I'm standing there, you're looking around. I'm like, okay, well, this was a waste of time. I look to my left, and there's an open door, and there's a crowd of people mingling around. They're shaking hands. They're fist bumping each other. They're talking to cops, and they're going in the Capitol. So I was like, well, shit, man. They let them in. So I went in that door. I guess the center wing door. I make it the right turn. I make it about 30 feet, and I notice that, man, this isn't right. There's shit broken in here. There's lecterns turned over. There's bookshelves or something that weren't up anymore. And I make a U-turn, and I exit, and I go back to the hotel. And that is pretty much my experience at the Capitol that day. That is everything that happened. I was in there for a minute and 20. I never got the 1512 charge. I was never put that on me. I had the assault charge, some 1752, some civil disorders with violence, the regular stuff everybody else got minus the 1512.
So after the day of January 6th, everybody, they had like the shock and awe campaign. They start hunting people down. So like what goes on in your head after this point? It's January 7th. How soon do you get picked up? How do you get picked up? Do you get turned in? Do you turn yourself in? What's going on? And like, just describe the build up to how you were apprehended.
All right. So let me finish on how I left DC. So, I didn't know how to get back to the hotel because I had followed a crowd. I had that person who was helping me. I didn't know how to get back there. So I kind of waddled my way back through to Union Station. I get there and they're like, well, no, you need to go over to this area, which was the Triangle Station. I needed to go there to get on a certain colored bus or metro line to get back over into Alexandria. I was staying over there. So I ended up getting on this train, and it was at this point that everybody's talking about, they shot somebody at the Capitol, they killed somebody. And in my mind, I'm like, I saw that. This is when I told you to get back to this, is as I'm making my way back to the hotel, because I don't have a phone that's working, you're hearing now word of voice and people's videos, and like, man, they shot somebody at the Capitol, they killed somebody, man, they actually shot somebody. And I didn't hear any of this until I was on like the metro getting back to the hotel. And I do remember making a comment. I'm like, man, I was standing right next to that. I was standing right there when that happened, assuming that the person that was killed was the person they shot outside from all the blood on the ground that I was next to. I didn't know what happened other than the crowd pulled that body away. And that's all I saw. So I assumed my mind, and they use this against me too because I saw that and I made that comment. So when I get to the hotel is closed down because there was a fire alarm pulled or something like that, and everybody's in the lobby. And I look wretched, man. I limp in. I'm pepper sprayed. My eyes are red. My face is red. I'm stinging. My clothes have CS gas on them. They have pepper spray on them. They have just, everything I just look like hell. And these girls, old ladies, I remember talking to older ladies, and they're like, oh, how was your day? What happened? And you got to remember the 4 comments I made, all right? We kind of went through the story. The first thing I said is like, well, the cops shot somebody. The scuffle broke out over the body. The body won. These people won. The body won. There was a scuffle that broke out over somebody got shot. And the crowd won, and that kind of said it died down. And I said, well, then I told the cops that if they kept spraying me. I said the cops are spraying everybody. I said if they sprayed again, I'd spray them back. I dared them, whatever. I said that comment, and then later on it was they sprayed and I sprayed them back. Well, they sprayed that girl, and that's when I went back and sprayed back. So of those 3 comments that I made at the hotel, which you're saying that they quoted that I said, there's a video of that conversation, which I've only seen a few times. But those 3 comments were the things that I kind of described at 3 different times of that day within the hour, right? The first one was, don't spray again. I'll spray you back. Stop spraying. Second was, the first was the fighting over the body, don't spray again, I spray you back, and I sprayed them back, and I got like 15 of them. Well, those were the 3 that I kind of went over. Those were my, in my interpretation, that was the comments I made. I was very, very accurate in, I guess, what I said, other than they sprayed me, I sprayed them back. But the events and the sequence was exactly what happened. And even the FBI in the bond here, he said, well, Mr. Caldwell said very nonchalantly that, he makes these comments. And that was from the FBI agent. But the prosecution's like, he was bragging about it. He bragged about this. You can hear it in his voice. And the FBI agent in my bond is like, well, nonchalantly, he made these statements nonchalant. To me, that means just like, at a matter of fact, just, well, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Oh, thank you so much for what you did. We appreciate it. Oh my God. Oh Lord, thank you. And next thing you know, that ends up in a video that got me identified from facial recognition. That was the video that sealed it. So after that, I go. They cleared the fire alarm, so the hotel opened back up. It was Renaissance Hotel in Alexandria. So I go into my room and I turn on the TV, and I remember stripping down, throwing all my clothes in the little plastic bags. They have pepper spray shit all over in the plastic bag that they hang for your laundry, and I put it in another plastic bag, and I'm sitting there in my underwear, and I'm watching TV, and I'm thinking, oh, what is this about, Because then everything starts clicking in your head, right? And I think I made the comment, well, they had shot somebody, right? In the neck. I remember saying that downstairs. Well, I assumed that, the person that they said had been killed had been shot in the neck. I remember them pointing at the face. You just shot an unarmed civilian in the face. So, and then later at the hotel, on the way to the hotel, you're like, oh yeah, they shot a girl at the. So I made the comment, like, they shot her in the neck. Well, that was from me not knowing to getting my way back to the hotel to them saying that they shot a woman. And I'm thinking it's still outside. I didn't know Ashley Babbitt was inside. I didn't know the person outside wasn't who they were talking about on the news. I thought that was it. So keep that in mind as we talk later. So I remember watching TV, and I knew, oh shit, this is not good, because Anderson Cooper, within the same segment, within 2 or 3 minutes, went from, well, the protest turned from this to that, and then it went from protest, and he like checks his earpiece, and he hears producer, he just knows producer's like, no, we're going to use this term. It went from protest to riot, and then it went from, within the same segment, a couple minutes after that, from protest to riot to insurrection. And I was like, oh shit. This isn't good. Then the alarm came out, the warnings that my phone, charge my phone in, and there's a curfew. I get in the shower, I clean up, I go downstairs, I order food from pizza delivery place during COVID. I eat, and I'm sitting there thinking, when there's a curfew, I didn't know if I was at DC, if Alexandria was part of DC. I'm like, I'm not going to get locked in here. I just packed my shit up in my backpack and got in the truck and started driving home. Same day. So I make it home, and the next day, the next sun comes out, I'm still driving. And I just remember telling people, like, shit got out of hand. The shit just got out of hand. And what happened? I'm like, man, it got out of hand. They're attacking the crowd, and shit got out of hand. And that's all I said. That's all I said to my family. That's all I said to anybody I talked to was, to me, that's what happened. Shit got out of hand. So I guess naturally, I honestly think I minimized everything. I didn't hit cops. I didn't do what we'd seen before, where, I didn't put hands on a cop. I didn't think what I did, not knowing that who I initially, just naturally responded to, who I sprayed at, didn't get them. I didn't think I was in any kind of trouble, really, to be honest with you. I drove back, like, well, I'm out of there. This is over. Never going to do that again. Not going to no damn, just you start pondering in your head. And I got home. That was I think I got home late night on the 7th or the 8th. I went back into work the next weekend and just kind of went through do work. And later to find out we got discovery that they identified me on like the 28th or 22nd or 28th of January. They figured out who I was. And they started their investigation. They started following me the week before they picked me up. I got picked up February 10th at work at 4:30 in the morning because I work nights. And they've been following me. They got my schedule. They worked with my employer to figure out when I got there, when I left. So after finishing my whole shift that week, I was off for the week at 4:30 that morning on my last day of night. They called me down in the lobby. He said, "Oh, you got a visitor at the lobby." I'm like, "I've been there 23 years. I never get a visitor at the lobby at 4:30." And then the pit in the stomach hit, and I was like, "Oh shit, this is what?" I never went online to look if I was on the most wanted. I didn't think it was going to happen to me. I didn't punch a cop. I didn't throw shit at a cop. I didn't associate what I did as a blatant, just an assault on a cop. I minimized it in my head, as not being very, because it didn't click. And maybe that's the traumatic brain injury that I have, or maybe that's part of the PTSD or whatever it is, but it just didn't click that, man, that maybe I should be looking at this and turning myself in. It never dawned on me that they'd come after me, because at that point, maybe in my head, I'm like, well, there was a lot more worse shit happening. Those guys didn't get in trouble. Why would they come after me? I didn't do anything. Maybe that's what I said in my head, but, they picked me up at 4:30 in the morning, and I remember when I left, so you got a picture where I worked was probably an 80, 100-acre type area, big factory. And I remember when they walked me out, they got cuffs. It's February 10th. It's freezing outside. I wear shorts to work because I was in a smock all night. And I remember the amount of officers they had at every entrance onto the facility, and every door and exit to the factory were covered with M4s and night vision goggles. Like 2 or 3 cops at each exit. There's probably 20 exits and entrances into these buildings. So you're talking to like probably 50 cops that I thought I remember seeing that were just waiting for me to like, oh no, he's going to disappear, run out of some exit building, because I did. But that's the extreme they went to, and that's when they got me. It was February 10th.
And this was based. You said this was facial recognition software, so you didn't get turned in by anybody. They just happened to run. They ran your face, and that's how they got you.
Yeah, so initially they ran my face. When they did, they ran like a patch I had on my backpack. That was from one of the events I attended. I do milsim stuff, so I had a patch on there, and they identified the patch. They tracked that patch down. But let everybody know out there that if you have a driver's license, which everybody does now because they made you renew them, and it has a gold star on that driver's license, that gold star means that your face, that the picture they took, is now registered in the National Security Agency and any law enforcement, FBI, NSA, CIA. They all share the same database, so you are now facially recognized. That picture was to put you in a database. A lot of people don't know that, but that gold star on the front of your driver's license means that your picture is now logged. So, and they ran that, and they popped up as my name. They saw the badge, and then they started asking people, "Do you know this guy?" "Well, I know him. That's so and so. I've played with him before." They start asking people stuff about, and so they go and they build. That's how they secondary that your identity. This is who you are, and this is who they think you are. So that facial recognition from the hotel and that camera that was put online from those women, you making that statement is what they got me and identified me with that video of facial recognition.
Do you think that video was recorded maliciously?
I think so, absolutely. Now I do. Hell yeah, I do. It wasn't like they were on the phone in my face. It wasn't like, "Oh, let's record what you're saying." It was just a conversation I had with 2 older ladies in a lobby.
Well, the reason I asked too is I'm sure you remember in like the summer, a couple like into being in DC off evidence.com, there was that summer they just unloaded thousands of hours of video specifically from the hotels. And so yes. that in the back of my head, I mean, obviously hotels have CCTV, I mean, but whatever, but I think of DC and that area, the whole DMV is one of the most monitored areas in the entire world, let alone the country. And so I'm just thinking, where people just kind of parked out, did they have like unsuspecting looking people parked in all the hotels waiting for people to come back, and maybe you having, with limping in, wearing
like I've been pepper sprayed.
I think you were wearing like some camouflage thing or something like that probably stood out.
Oh God, please don't get me started. Yes, but yeah, I wore. So if I can describe this, as you say that, it's kind of important. I wore camouflage pants, an olive drab sweatshirt. I had a camouflage backpack, camouflage hat, all multi-cam, which we call multi-clam, right? It's a pattern that I absolutely like. I had tennis shoes on, camouflage pants, a sweatshirt, camouflage hat, right? So, of course, the FBI says I'm in a militia because I'm wearing camouflage. But when they arrest me, the night they arrest me, what hat was I wearing? Well, the same hat I wore on January 6th because I wear it every damn day. What glasses did they find in my truck? Well, it's the glasses that he wore that wrapped around his face because he knew he was going to pepper spray the police and he was going to attack them and he needed to protect his eyes. They were in the console because I wore them to work that night. What was the shoes I was wearing when they arrested me? The same shoes I was wearing at D.C. because I wear them every day. What sweatshirt was I wearing when they arrested me a month later? Was the same sweatshirt I wore to D.C. because it's one of my favorite fucking sweatshirts. So everything that they arrested me in was the same shit I wore there, but I dressed up prepared to go to war because I wore camouflage pants. But all the other shit I wear as a daily outfit anyways. So,
you've convinced me, Dan. You're not an insurrectionist. You are a hobo.
So, yeah. So they go, where are we at? They picked me up from work, facial recognition. So we're talking about the lobby. So, I honestly believe that they had people there because, it had to happen. Mm. So, one other thing, facial recognition and the technology they have, support, because I found out during the vast watching body cam footage and looking through Discovery, kind of really digging into how they did it. So picture this. They have a picture of you at a hotel, all right? They've got that screenshot. Or they got a picture of you as a still from an MPD body-worn camera, right? So they take those two pictures. They can take 4 or 5 pictures. They put them in this big little query, right? And in this database is, let's say, 5,000 body-worn camera videos from the whole day from every police force that use body-worn cameras. Mm. It goes and plays every single one of those videos looking for your 5 pictures to anything that matches that. And I've seen where they had identified me on 7 or 8 body cams for the picture from the hotel room. They can now use that picture and play and compare and query your picture from somewhere else, your driver's license, anywhere else, to every body cam footage instantaneously. Mm. I have that report. So you want to know what cops' body cam picture you showed on? You pull this little thing up. They have it. I was like, oh, okay, well, this officer's here. You go look at his body cam. Yep, there I am. How'd they find me there? Because they used that picture from the hotel. And now they look for green hat, look for green this, look for green sweatshirt, compare it against all these videos that we have, 1,000 hours of it, and it'll query out and put off to the side all the videos that you show up in.
Yeah, and that's also for those, I'm sure you're familiar with the Sedition Hunters too. They use the exact same software. I'm almost positive. So they've been in terms of that. In the past years before they stopped the arrests, they were using facial recognition software and probably pulling from multiple government videos as well as publicly available videos and identifying people this more or less the same way.
Yes. Yeah.
You get picked up at work. Take me through, if you don't mind, take us through diesel therapy. From the day you're picked up to the time you end up in the DC jail, how much time does it take for you to get from A to B, or is it A to B? Do you spend time in county jails? Do they bounce you around the country? How does that work for you?
So I got picked up that February 10th. They took me to Collin County Jail, which is probably 15 minutes from my work. They put me there. I'm there for a few days till my arraignment. I go to my arraignment. And at that point, I'm passed off to the U.S. Marshals. I get fingerprinted in. I get all the stuff to the U.S. Marshals. And now I'm at my, your magistrate judge for arraignment. And after that, pleading not guilty. My lawyer's there. And I packed me up in another van, which is going to Fannin County now. So we spent a few days at Collin County. Then I'm going to the federal holding in Fannin County in Texas, which is probably a little over an hour away from where I did my arraignment. So once I'm there, I'm put in quarantine pod for 10 days. And during that 10 days, I have no. It wasn't that 10 days. I go to the 10 days. I go to the pod, and then they sign me to another pod, D19, and this is the pod that I didn't think I was going to live in. This was put the January 6th guy in a pod that if he's going to get stabbed and shanked and beat up, it's going to be with this group of people. You know, it was a very racially mixed. It was only me and another person in there that were of our ethnicity, and it was very scary because before I got there, they just mentioned that they just beat a Colombian guy damn near to death. They took him to the hospital. The guy died 3 days later from the beating he took in there. And you go in there and you hear this. You look at the cameras, and there's toilet paper over the cameras. And I've never been in jail like this before, you know, to this extent. Nothing more than an overnight, hey, you're done, go home. We'll talk about you in court in a little while. This was real. This hit. The 10 days in quarantine, and I get called in for a bond hearing. And I go to the magistrate. I'm denied bond for all the reasons of I'm a racist, I'm a white military experienced wacko, I can't be trusted, I'm too much of a danger to the community, all this stuff. And I go back to the jail, and the only other person of my ethnicity that was in there had some issues with a guy on the street. So they carried this issue in on the street, from the street into jail, and they were just by chance from the same pod. And I'm in there, and the guy tells me, hey, man, I'm about to pop off with this guy. Just stay in your rack and don't do anything. This is between him and I only, and nobody's going to, you know. So I'm looking at this guy going, man, I don't know what the hell to do. You know, I know the rules. I kind of know what you're supposed to do, but this guy tells me that they've had beef on the street and they're going to settle it, you know. Well, that guy that told me that, of my car, I guess you would say, right, in the county jail, just gets demolished. You know, and just pulverized to where I had to interject myself in a way of like, look, man, this guy's about to die. He's choking on his blood. You know, they shattered his face, they shattered his cheek, they shattered his nose, they broke his jaw. He's not breathing, and when he does breathe, he's coughing up blood. It's coming out of his ears, it's coming out of his eyes, it's coming out of his nose. I'm like, he's going to die. He's got a head injury. I got to get him on his side. So as I get to this county jail, I see this, and now, you know, I'm like, crap. The guards end up coming, asking what happened. They just drag him out, and, you know, goes about his business. Now I'm the only one in there. And I literally spend 20, 30 days in there, literally on my rack, minding my own business and reading. I've never read so much in my life till I got in that cell. But it's all about respect. So that's the second stop I made. And then I was leaving there. I missed my second bond, and at my second bond, they're like, no, not getting bond. He's been called to D.C. So they denied my second bond, and he's too much of a risk. He's going to this. He's being assigned to go to D.C. It's too dangerous. So they shipped me from there a few days after that to Grady County. And this is the time that I was in Grady County where I wasn't in a main jail cell. They put me in an annex off to the side. So there was a lot of more J6ers in there during this time that I was in there, but I just didn't know because I was off campus on like an annex, a newer part of a jail. It was a one-story thing off to the side of Grady in a pod over there, and that was more relaxing. I actually got to relax, got to work out, got to read. But when we shipped out of there, I think I was there for another 15 days in that jail. And then if we're leaving Grady, they're like, you're going to Oklahoma to the FTC. So you go to that transfer facility, you sit there for a little while, and then you go on Con Air, and you're flying into DC. So eventually get on the plane. At Grady is where I met Gieswein, Cressman. I can't remember the two brothers. One of the brothers were from Montana. You had the guy that looked like little Bud Bundy, who was with us for a while. There's probably, I think the Colonel was there with us. That joke.
There was a Colonel?
Yeah. Who was that? So, and I just know it is so funny, is they're like, "Hey man, what are you doing here?" "Oh, J6." I didn't talk with nobody. I didn't talk with any of those guys. Even when we got to jail, I just clammed up and didn't talk to any of the other guys at J6ers. Man, they were just telling their stories and this and that, and I'm like, these idiots, just shut up and get through this process. Let's just go. But end up becoming really good friends and brothers with these guys in the DC jail. So I get to DC, actually fly us into Harrisburg down to the DC jail, check in DC jail, and we get assigned to C2A for our quarantine time.
What day was that? Do you know the date?
I got back. I got there in DC, I think on the March 25th. So this is a month and 15 days. I got picked up on the 10th of February to March. Yeah, so a month and 10 days from the time I got picked up to the time I landed in DC.
And you were
1, 2, 3 jails between that month and 15 days.
And you were in C2A. I know a lot of people were held in C2A before they kind of filtered into C2B. Were you quarantining in C2A, or for how long were they hold? How long?
So they were. Go ahead. I'm so sorry, Tim.
No, you should be. How dare you? How long were you? How long were you in C2A before you finally made it over to B?
Okay, so we got C2A on like the 25th, the night of the 25th, and we were supposed to be there for 2 weeks, right? And at 2 weeks, they kind of held us in there for a little bit longer, but after that, we all kind of migrated from C2A to C2B, and that's where they put me up in cell 45, which is next to Cash Kelly. But you remember at this time, COVID was a huge lockdown. We were solitary confinement. Even in A or B, you were in your cell, and only a few people came out at a time. So I get to C2B, and I'm in 45, and boy, that was a mess to first begin with. I was in C2B for a while. Maybe I remember my lawyer flying in from Dallas to come see me, and I had to do I did a face-to-face with him. And after that, they sent me back to C2A because I had outside contacts. I went back to quarantine. So I kind of went back over there, and that's when Jeff McKellop stayed over there, because when Munchell left, Jeff kind of took over the orderly for C2A. Right? And when I went back over to C2A, because I had to re-quarantine because I had outside contacts, I packed all my shit up. They put all of it back to C2A. I stayed over there for a long time. Me and Jeff became the orderlies over there. And that's when everybody started coming in, Tanios and Jenkins and Cater and Webster and all those people that came in. Well, I stayed over there from April all the way into almost June as orderlies and watched everybody else come through and go to C2B. So we kind of were able to hang out in C2A for a while as orderlies, but then they made everybody come to C2B. And that was probably in the May, I think, somewhere in the middle of May, that we went over to C2B, as everybody did. There was nobody left in C2A.
Yeah, no, it kind of... I was one of the first people in C2B. I never even went to A. And then it was just interesting. People just kind of came in like waves, and then until eventually the top tier was filled up. Well, on the subject of B, or really just, I haven't heard anything good about C2A. Obviously, you already mentioned the solitary. That didn't really change once coming over to B, but I've also heard that more or less it was the same kind of condemned dump.
Yes.
What was, if you could summarize, like what was it like living in C2B or C2A? Just being in CTF, I guess. What was daily life like for you?
For me, daily life was, I'm locked in the cell, and I'm talking through Cash through Nervent. Cash is telling me that Hughes wants to be taken out because I'm a white supremacist. He looked me up on the phone, and Cash has already, was saying that, no, that's, I'd already established a relationship through the event with Cash. We prayed together. We sang, the anthem stuff together. We just talked a lot through the air vent. And he got me through some hard times, because at that point, I'm shell shocked because my lawyer's like, you're done. They're offering, you're done. There's nothing we can do. And, if you go to trial, you're going to get 15 years. They're coming after you, I'm like, well, this makes no sense, man. So you're sitting there and you're just wondering, my future is effed. It's effed. It's never going to be. I've lost everything. I lost my job. At that point, the truck's gone, the money from the retirement's gone, you're paying a lawyer, and everything just goes away. You're trying to put stuff in storage, and how you go pay for the storage, and just shit falls apart. And you get in a mode to where, man, I was depressed, man. My PTSD kicked in, and I just remember I had to try to get myself out of this mode. There's like you gotta change what's going on. So I'd already been working out. I literally turned into a burpee king as much as I could in my cell.
I remember you challenging people to burpee competitions.
Dude, I was ready to go.
You could do as many burpees as me? I remember that.
Well, when you're doing up to 400 burpees, two push-up burpees at a time, it's like, well, I can do anything. But, you live in there. I remember waking up, you eat your breakfast, I give it 30, 40 minutes, I do 200 burpees. I'm like, all right, I'm sweating my ass off. You go to the sink, you do your bird bath in the sink, and I read, wait for lunch to come, eat lunch, let it digest. I'm like, and nothing else to do. I've been reading, I ate already, let's do some more burpees. So 200 more burpees, and then you shower in the sink again. And then you wait for dinner to come, and dinner comes, and it's like, you can't eat this shit because it's horrible. And it's like, well, I didn't eat half my lunch because it was rotten or smelled like chemicals, or, the eggs are brown, or, it's just, you remember every meal we got in there was questionable.
Mm.
So you either ate it or you didn't. And there was a lot of times I didn't eat, just they'd have a full tray sitting there ready to come out and do more burpees and read. Couldn't see a TV, couldn't see, where you were at. It was just, you had yourself, man. And that was the torture. When they say solitary can really get to somebody, you really come out of there. And I noticed it not as mad as other people, and I still do it to this day, where you have conversations with yourself. At first it's in your head, then it's a little bit of whisper, then it's this, but then it's full on conversations out loud. You're reading a book and you're like, man, what do I got to do that for? Man, I would do it this way. And you start talking about how you would do something that you just read the book differently because what they did was messed up. But you're having this full on conversation and you're going through this massive depression of, I've lost everything. I'm not getting out. I'm doing the rest of my life in prison. And that's a hard pill to swallow. That's, and that happened for 2 years. You've been there, how those first months were when it's 23-1, and then the 22-2, and that made it a little bit better, but towards the end, we started getting the 19-5, and we did the improvements. Our group, I think, made the drastic improvements from it being the shit, piss, and man spray that was all over everybody's cells, and the mold, and the shit no chemicals to clean the shit from the bottom of the rack that you had above you.
Shit, piss, jizz, snot, man spray.
Man spray. I love Jeff. I love you, Jeff. So, and you live in that, there's no chemicals to clean. And it's just, you just manage, man. You just manage.
We're, it's always the same answer. I know what the answer is because I lived through it, and everybody I asked lived through it. But for the sake of posterity, like what would you say the biggest issues were with being inside the DC jail? On top of the fact, of course, you're denied bail, you're being wrongfully held, but like to be in there, for those who weren't there, what were the conditions of the jail itself? You'd hinted at the food being bad, besides that, like in terms of how you were treated, how we were all treated, and you kind of hinted, and obviously the solitary itself took a toll on people's minds, but in terms of mind, body, and spirit, what did being in there actually do to people, and what do people need to know about the conditions of the jail?
Well, let's talk about torture. Let's talk about the different types of torture. You have psychological, you have physical, and you have mental. Well, the mental and the physical. The physical torture was you're in your cell. No exercise other than what you could do in there. There's no outside rec. We went months without seeing outside. There's no haircuts. There's no shaving. And for me, that was horrible because you couldn't eat without chewing your lip because your mustache gets caught in your food and you literally having to chew your mustache with your teeth as your clippers to trim your mustache. So we went almost a year without haircuts, or shaving. You'll see the pictures of only 5 months after that started, and then at Christmas time.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think it was. I got there February 3rd, so for me, I think it was. But I got arrested in January, and I was always in solitary from my arrest onwards. So it was like, for me, I think it was 16 months I went without a haircut, and having been in the military, like I had never had long hair on my scalp before, and yet it was down to my back.
Yeah. Mine wasn't that long until I was like a hippie kid back in the 70s. As an adolescent, it was that long. But yeah, it's long. It's so as that happens, and not being able to see the TV depending on what cell you're in, and when you did get out, you only had time to take a shower with the black mold and the shit crawling out of the sinks. The cockroaches that would eat the corn. That would come out of the drains of the shower, and the mold, and and the officers. Officers, when we came in there, man, they were looking for a reason to abuse us, whether it be physically, mentally, challenging us. You ain't gonna do shit, or punching you when you start to think you want to sing the national anthem, show any kind of patriotism. They slam you against an elevator, they punch you, or the shit they did, or they would target people. We all know what happened to Samsol. We know what happened to Fairlamb. See America the Beautiful.
Mm.
They were ready to come in, and it was the same officers, but and you waited that someday there'd be an officer come in that had any little ounce of feeling and humanity in them. That you just begged for that day to come, because you're now being broken down to think and feel like they want you to think, like what they're calling you. The officer's job, and mine was like to berate you, and the police and the press and the wardens and trying to find a way to fix it, trying to make it better, and nobody wanted to listen. You're just a piece of shit. You're in your cell. Shut up. You're going to jail for life. And they just beat you down and constantly just make you feel like what you did was wrong, and you want to have a voice. I think the biggest thing that I struggled with was knowing what I know, knowing what I saw, knowing why I did what I did, and not being able to tell nobody, not being listened to, couldn't be heard. Mail was horrible. You couldn't send a letter out and get it because it would never show up. That it was 5 or 6 months before we get mail in. I got a Father's Day card in January of the following year. It took that long to get it in. So it's sitting down in the mailroom. There's no correspondence. So unless you had money to pay for minutes on a phone, which a lot of people didn't, you didn't talk to nobody. Nobody came to saw you. No visitations. And that conditions on top of everything was from every front you were attacked. You were attacked in everything you did, everything you thought, everything you said was an attack against you and everything you thought you were as a human being. I could see why some people in POW camps in the middle of a jungle get broken. There was a lot of dark thoughts going through a lot of people's heads while you're in there. It's like, but I think with brotherhood that we had in there with some people, pulled people through with you as best you could. And it may not be much, but hey, I'm out for this hour. I remember, if I'm struggling, I have brothers come stand at my door on their whole hour out and just try to talk with people and just to have that interaction with another inmate and see a face, at their door, and that some officers let you do it, others like, can't do this. They'll get away from their cell. But you beg for any kind of interaction. It's the isolation and the humiliation that was the worst, and the communication. You didn't have it. So there's times I didn't have money to make phone calls. You just didn't talk with nobody. Nobody come to visit. Because you didn't have visitation. So you're locked away, and nobody knows and nobody cares.
What, with all of that and knowing, I was in there with you for the better part of 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, I think I left. I left in the fall of 2022. You were in there for a
Few more months.
few
I
more
left.
months after that.
I
Yeah.
left on March 1st.
What like what was your what was like I missed you and a lot of the guys I had to leave behind, but I was so ready to leave and go to prison at that point because there was the brotherhood, but there were also a lot of dirtbags in there that showed their true colors.
A lot of dirtbags.
Yeah. What was your, and again, you know, I had, even me, I had an advantage over you, which is that I didn't have a family I needed to get back to. So I can only
Yeah.
imagine, like, what was your thought process in choosing to resolve your case the way you did? Go to trial versus take a plea deal? What was going through your head with that?
Well, I think, there's an incident that happened, and kind of like, I think the thing that really started weighing heavy on me was the whole Bryant Mock, the spray incident in the cell. I asphyxiated, I passed out, hit my head, and trying to recover from that, trying to get help from that, where I literally thought I died, So, and before I kind of get to that, it kind of puts a picture on, I'm going to die in jail, and that changes your mind a little bit. That happened on Veterans Day. If you remember Veterans Day of 21,
Yeah.
I think it was 21. Yeah, Veterans Day 21. They came in and just gassed the hell out of the room, and got a lot of it got in my cell, and I couldn't breathe and passed out. And the lady who was on duty who had the keys, as soon as that happened, that officer came in and started chasing Mock around and just spraying the shit out of everything.
Yeah.
She took off, so there was no key to open the door. And Cash is out there beating on my door trying to get somebody to let me out because I thought I was dead. I went from, Cash, please help me, brother. Don't let me die in here, because I literally was just blacking out. It's just that sight going into that little bitty black tunnel into nothing, just closing down. And that's all I remember was like, it was it. I was done.
Yeah. It took
I remember telling Jeff McKellum, dude, I'm dying over here. I think I'm dying. I'm suffocating. And that's all I remember until I woke up with snot and shit all over my face out by the showers where Kenny and I forget who else was it, Shane? I don't know, Kenny and I don't remember who but they got the door open and carried me out, dragged me.
Yeah.
And that was,
I remember you were right in front of the showers, kind of close to those stupid ugly rubber chairs. You were on the ground there. I can't feel my legs or something like that.
Yeah, I can't feel my. The funniest thing I said was, and they joke about it now. Megs will tell you every day. The funniest thing Caldwell ever did in jail was tell my family I love them.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That
Go ahead, you can laugh too, asshole.
And it was fucked up too, because I counted actually, and I would yell every 5 minutes. I would yell 30 minutes,
Yep,
30 minutes without medical. And it was about an hour before they finally got people to come look at you.
So you asked how that transit. So that right there was, what do I got to do to get out of here? It's not going to get any easier here. I'm only going to look at a longer sentence. That was November of 21. So you kind of play around, and remember, we didn't have discovery. So there was a point where it was like, I'm not doing anything. I need to see my discovery. Of course, that is your whole right to defend yourself. Because I knew if I could show what I'd seen, that makes sense. So you hold that, I'm going to trial. Well, little things start happening like that incident right there where, I thought I'd suffocated and died. I just literally thought I did. And then you have, we still did no haircuts. And I remember we finally started getting discovery back in like January of 22. So damn near after 11 or 12 months, we started finally getting access to have whatever little evidence we could get. A thumb drive with 2 body cam videos and a bunch of files that made no sense to you. Your LexisNexis history from 1995 till now, all your emails, so it's like, man, this isn't going to work. One is, I almost died in here. The torture going on in here. I need to see my family. They're struggling. My kid's in high school. I'm missing his whole high school. he's 2 years into this now, and he's struggling. He's his dad. They're struggling on money. They're trying to make ends meet. So things start stacking up as you go through this process, and you start seeing other people go through this process. So you're evaluating, and everybody's like, no, we're all going to trial. No, we're going to fight this. If we all go to trial, they'll lose. They can't, because they can't beat us all, and little by little, bond hearings get rejected. More people come in. Their torture stuff that you're hearing. Things don't get better, they get worse. And, it comes to the point to where guys that in there that had gotten out and that were going to trial. Now, I remember vividly, Tom Webster leaving was a very emotional day for me because we had gotten so close. And he was so scared to tell me, I knew he went to his hearing or bond hearing, stuff like that, and he came back and he's locked in his cell, and I don't remember where we came back from or what, but he's like, man, I hate to say this, man, but I'm going home. And I was so happy for him, man. But at that point, I was also like, shit, man, there goes a brother. There goes somebody who I needed in here.
Yeah.
That's somebody that I talk to every day. And I can only imagine if it was Jeff next, or me, or you, or Megs, or Kenny, or just whether it be Cash helping us, or, Jess, or just the people you come really close to, or Rob, just those core groups that helped you, that knew how to put a smile on your face when you needed it. So when Tom left, I'm like, shit, there's another one gone, So, and then watching his process, Tom's background was, New York cop, Mary Julie Lyons bodyguard, Mary Torres Promotions, was decorated, never had an issue, never pulled a service weapon, just a good cop from the city of New York in a bad area. To do that and to be a Marine and to do that and to carry yourself that way, knowing that he has an impeccable record. And it was the day that Tom, in September 6th, I think, or 1st or something like that, in 22, Tom went to trial. He got found guilty in May, and they sentenced him in September. And I'm sitting there, and I'm still like, I'm going to fight this. I got a public defender at the time, so you have everything again stacking up.
10
retirement's
years.
gone. Was that
10 years?
Yeah, family struggling. You got hurt. I remember at that time, I think I hurt my calf. You remember, I tore my calf muscle.
Yeah.
So they put a walking boot on me for 6 months and said, oh, it'll be fine. It'll just get better. I've asked for psychological help. I asked for help for PTSD. I asked for help in there like that. So every avenue you try to get help to battle the demons and the thoughts you're having in there, there's some deep thoughts, man. How do you would say it? There's some really bad things that go on in your head to just like, this has to stop. I mean, that's all I'm going to say about it. Just like this, but you think about everything, your family, you think about everything. It's like, okay, I'm not there. You have hope. And hope was somebody's going to win this. It's going to be the cop. The cop's going to go to trial. They're going to win this. That cop punched him first. He's going to win. Guilty on all charges. And then the sentencing came in September. And it was 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was devastated. I was like, they gave this guy, a cop, one of their own, who clearly has video showing the cop punched him first, and he went after the cop. And he got 10 years. And when they tell me I'm going to do 15 years if I try to go to trial, even though it's outside your guidelines, you're going to add shit to it to get you to 15 years, I honestly bet they're right. I'm going to do 15 years for spraying an aerosol towards a police officer for 4 seconds. I'm going to do 15 years, which is, I can't be 65 when I get out of jail. They offered me a plea deal in June of 21, and I'm not taking it. I'm not taking that. It was 63 to 78 months for assault. I'm not doing that. But now it's like fighting. I told them we're going to trial. We told them we're fighting this. We're going to trial. All my bond hearings got denied. The status hearing was still bitching on discovery. So everything stacked up against us. Everything that you knew you were supposed to have just gets shut down and kicked in the balls every time. Bond hearings, right to speedy trial, delay for status hearings, your family, jail, other people, the officers, abuse. Everything we've talked about just comes to a point at that time that Tom Webster got found guilty. And when they sentenced him to 10 years, by the time that news segment was even over, I was on the phone calling my lawyer and tell them to take the plea. And that was in September of 22. Because I'm a Marine, I can stand, but I'm not. At that point, I was like, I can't die. I have to see my family again. I can't let it end this way, And I had no choice. We all had no choice, When you're looking at that kind of time, I could have gone to trial, and there's a 100% conviction rate. And what makes sense? Go to trial and get 15 years, or take a plea and get 6.
Yeah.
So that was the only option I had. It was the only option to get home and to get out and to have hope. That's the only thing. It's sad when you have hope that 6 years is going to be that's the best thing, and you have hope that 6 years is going to go by fast. That's the only hope you have, and to see your family again.
Yeah, that's a deal. Yeah.
At that point, that's just a deal. We always talk about, this is no plea deal. Where's the bargain? This is no bargain. This is no deal. This is bottom end of the guideline. Where's the 32 months and deferred whatever, everybody else was getting, or the deferred with prejudice that half the people, 200 people did over in Portland, whatever. Right. At that point, you knew you were not going to get treated the same. Same crimes, same charges, 111As with a B. 200 of them had it, and they all got released. Not in D.C., not with us. We all got charged. We all got picked up. And we're all going to do 15 if we go to trial.
Yeah. And then it's not like it was just like that before J6. It was like that after J6. They were rioting in DC after we were in there, and they were ramming cops with bike racks. They were environmental rioters, and they got tickets. So it was very clear that before, after, there was never going to be another thing like J6 in terms of how they prosecuted us.
They had their bus ticket, what they thought was going to be a bus ticket, to never having to Trump going to prison, and to have the Republican Party tarnished so bad that we couldn't recover from it.
Yeah.
And every individual is just horrible. So that was my time in D.C. I took the plea. I got sentenced on February 1st. So I took the plea. I think we had our plea hearing on September 26th, and it was at that point, she's like, well, you have to agree to this, that you knowingly and willingly did this. Well, I didn't willingly do this. I did this in response to somebody. Mr. Caldwell, you're not allowed to talk, but do you understand what I'm saying? Well, I understand what you're trying to say, but that's not why I did what I did. Mr. Caldwell, if you don't agree to this, that you did it this way, that you knowingly and willingly went after those cops because you were mad and you wanted to assault them. That's not what happened. I did a response. I responded to what the cops were doing to the crowd. I said that, and the judge is like, well, Mr. Jenkins, I can't take his plea deal. I can't do this. He's not agreeing to the terms of the plea. I'm like, I understand I did what I did, and it's wrong. I agree with that. But you're not understanding why I did it. Well, that doesn't matter. You did it. You will take this or you're not. Or we'll see you in trial. And she's asked, what was his defense going to be, Mr. Jenkins? Well, it was going to be defense of third party, defense of self. So his defense was that he attacked the police because they were attacking the crowd, because the crowd that was trying to breach the Capitol and destroy the democracy, because they were doing that and the police abused them for trying to stop them from doing that, he thinks he has the right to defense of others. Either he says he did this knowingly and willingly, or I'm not taking this plea. And my lawyer says some fancy wording to where she was satisfied, and I had the understanding, but I had on record that that's not why I did what I did. I responded based on what the cops were doing.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, we accept the plea. Here's that. We'll send it to you on this date. And that was February 1st she was going to give me 70. The plea was 63 to 78. The government asked for 70. And it was at this point during this sentencing where all the shit that the FBI said and all the shit the prosecutor said leading up to this day, white supremacist, was part of whoever the hell the Sons of Liberty are, was a right-wing wacko, was a racist, even though I had black friends I traveled with and stayed in hotels with on airsoft stuff. All the stuff they said in the bond hearings that were the lies that were not corroborated, but they used and sensationalized to keep me in there, they finally admitted. We didn't find out we looked at every sporting store between between the colony and DC on his path. We have no video cameras of showing that he tried to buy any pepper spray or that he no credit card purchases. We looked at all his internet history, his phone history. There was nothing, and of course, there's nothing because I didn't buy it. That was we've been trying to tell him. And they came, it was like, we didn't see he was doing this. Mr. Caldwell just seemed like he got emotionally tied up in this, and he did what he did. I wish them assholes would have said that on March 3rd of 2021. I could have been at home where you can actually work on your case with your lawyer. Because even when we were in jail, there was no lawyer access meaningful to watch Discovery. How are you going to watch hundreds of hours of Discovery that your lawyer only had that you didn't have access to? So there was no participating in your own defense, constitutional violation. It takes longer for, to watch the videos than they're going to give you for your next status hearing. So I got the sentencing February 1st, and it was 68 months. She gave me 2 months off because I was an orderly. I was a detail guy in the jail, and I had no disciplinary actions. So it took 2 months off. It gave me 68 months from 70.
Very generous.
Oh, yeah.
So you're obviously out now. You've been pardoned, but up until that point, you were still incarcerated. So I hate to say it was, I hate to ask if it was better, because nothing is better than being free, of course. But
right.
when you finally got sentenced, it was I'm sure there was a little waiting period before you got picked up by the BOP. But what was that period like? Did life improve at all when you finally went to prison?
If you could describe, I'm gonna be a little weird and graphic here. If you could describe DC as the shit that hits the bottom of the toilet bowl, the BOP was the shit that floats on top of the water in the toilet bowl. All right.
I don't know if that's. I guess that's better. They all float down here.
Yeah. Well, it's just one floats, one doesn't. But they're still shit. I lost my mom in December or November of 21 to cancer, and it was a relationship that I had wanted to try to heal, but I didn't. But I was able to talk to her a few times on the phone. Again, so now you lost your mother and you're in jail and you can't get out, and it's a 5-minute phone call to your little brother, and I'm sorry, I'm in here, and that was it. I mentioned that up during my allocution, which was a very emotional time for me because, they did open visitations up towards the end. I was able to see my dad and my sister. When my sister moved to Maryland, they came and visited. I saw my dad that one time. Before that, it was through the cemetery, the Congressional Cemetery. When they were in town, they came up there and flew and stood out there in the cemetery and waved. And I could see them through the window, through our windows in the cell, standing over there in the cemetery. And all they knew is what number of cell I was, like that, and I had a yellow piece of paper that I was waving, they could see.
Yeah.
So I get sentenced, and I lost my mom, and my dad has cancer. He has prostate cancer. He's a 100% disabled veteran. And it was at that time, I'm like, look, Judge, my daughter and my son-in-law showed up. It was the first time I'd seen them in 2 years, so I asked if I could address my family, and I turned around, and man, I lost it. I emotionally lost my bearing, and just my whole allocution was just tearful because I'm sitting there looking at my daughter while I'm reading this, and I'm just, your allocution, you make sure that you show remorse, do this, do that, do whatever, and, but it wasn't, I was remorseful, I can say I regret what I did, but I'm not ashamed of what I did.
Yeah.
It took so much from my family. It's destroyed my relationship with, my kid's mother. It's destroyed, so much of my life. The kids have struggled, but they've been very supportive the whole time, and there's always a phone call home, whether it be, with kid's mom, and just so much loving that there was there to answer the phone whenever I called and was there for support. It's just, things just get tough, and they become real, and life hits. And so I asked to be close to home. And there's 3 prisons within 2 hours of Dallas. You have Fort Worth, which is right next door to the house. you have Seagoville, you have Texarkana, which is about 2.5 hours north of Dallas, northeast, and you have Seagoville, which is about an hour southeast of Dallas, maybe 40 minutes southeast of Dallas. So I asked for Fort Worth, Texarkana, Seagoville. Well, they send me to good old pristine land, Seagoville. And I'm thinking, I'm so happy. I found that out when I got to USP Lewisburg, and when I shipped out from D.C., like, well, you're going to Seagoville. And I just was ecstatic. I'm going home. So instantly knowing that, my morale peaked up. You know, it peaked up, you know. I ended USP Lewisburg for holdover, and they put me in the jail with Julian Cater because he got sentenced a week before I did. He was just leaving when I'm getting there, so they put us in the same cell. It was good to see him. And then I load up, go to Seagoville. I get there, and as you know, when you get to your location, they drop you off in a building, and 4 or 5 guys come up to you from each representative of a car.
Yeah.
You know, who you with, who you with, and you're like, I don't know. They're asking you questions. Are you an SO? No. Are you a child molester? No. Are you gay? No. Are you transsexual? No. And it all leads with this stuff. I'm like, well, hell, this is pretty bad. If that's the questions they're asking me, and it's like, I'm not none of those, man. I'm here for January 6th. And like, oh, you're in the white boy car. Well, I guess so, but I'm not a white supremacist if that's what you're saying. Like, no. We're all independents here. Like, you need to go talk to this guy. You know, so you go that process, and you learn this thing, and they come in there, and okay, you're so-and-so, what's your name, what's your inmate number, I'm gonna be looking you up, you better not be lying to me, and I'm not lying to you, I'm gonna give my papers to you, all that, you know, that whole shit. Proving yourself. Well, come to find out, as I'm sitting there in this TV room with my new card that I understanding how it works, I'm like, why do they ask all the questions about this? Like, well, this is a safe haven. This yard is a mow yard, you know, and and I'm like, wow. So yeah, like of the 2,000 inmates here, or the 1,900, you know, there's probably 1,750 that are either LGBTQ plus whatever, SOM and sex offenders, child molested. And I'm like, well, I thought they couldn't be in prison. Well, all the other prisons they couldn't be in, they put them here. So I'm now blessed to be home, close to my parents, close to my family, but having to not be blessed because of everybody I'm around. You know, end up being, you know, it's just is what it is.
Yeah.
So, and it's their yard, you know.
Yeah.
So
a similar thing for me. I went to Fort Dix, which I had always heard, because I served on Fort Dix in the Army, and I was always told, you know, when I was in the reserves, they would always tell me, hey, you should get a job working on the base there as a security officer. And they're always saying, oh, it's a white collar prison. I'm like, okay, but I assume that means like tax fraud or like financial crimes or something. No, all chomos. All chomos. We called it the Chomo Mafia. It was amazing how much freedom they had compared to normal people. I know. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know, and the sad thing about that place is, like you said, there's 5 J6ers there at one point. You know, it was me. It was Judd, Hager, Phipps, Barnett, and myself were the 5 that were there. You know, so. But you know, it's pretty messed up when you go in the bathroom and the sign says on the shower stall 1 inmate at a time. You're like, well, that's a no-brainer. Why the hell they got to post that? We all know that. Now you know why. Yeah. You know, so it's pretty horrible, and I remember struggling numerous times, and one day I just lost it, and I was getting so upset. I wanted to hurt somebody. I was sent to psych from Unicor. Like, you need to go see psych, you know, because I was about to just strangle people. And I get there, and they're like, what are you here for? I'm like, man, I'm struggling. They sent me here, and I need to talk with somebody because I'm really having an issue. I got PTSD, and I'm a military veteran, and I'm really struggling right now. All right, we'll schedule you for next week. I'm like, well, that just defeats the fucking purpose of me being here right now, doesn't it? And I went back, and, you know, you struggle with it, and they never call you back the next week. No. I remember a couple months go by again, and I'm struggling again. And here he goes, Unicor, and then Unicor sent me back because I worked at Unicor, so that's where I was at. Just having issues, and you need to go back to psych. Okay, well, I go to psych, and I had been also trying to sign up for classes for PTSD and to get help because I knew some of the struggles I've had in my life and some of the issues I've had legally have stemmed from just impulsiveness and erratic behavior that just I never clicked on. I started filing for my stuff at 19 and 20. When I was in the process. The day I got arrested, I had my exam for TBI, for the CP exam for Veterans Disability, for traumatic brain injury I suffered. So I go see them again, and I thought, well, I got to change my tactics. So I sit down, and he comes out. He looks at me like, I know this guy. I've seen him before. What can I help you with? And I was like, what do I say to get attention here? Because did you guys have like the SOMP, you know what that is? The SOMP program where every psychologist on the facility was a SOMP director here, SOMP this, that, which is sex offender maintenance program. So they had all these shrinks, and they were dedicated to sex offenders. So if you were a veteran with PTSD and needed help or just needed to talk, they just gave you the big finger and finger blasted your asshole and kicked you out the door. You don't need help. So I thought, well, I got to change my tactics on this one. They're going to ask me what's wrong with me, and I want to sit down with somebody. So he's like, well, what's going on? I'm like, well, I think I want my dick cut off. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about transitioning. He's like, well, really? I'm like, yeah, I figured that's the only way I can get to talk to you guys. I may have to try that avenue. And he kicked me out. Told me to get the fuck out. So that didn't work either. So
it was worth it. It was worth a shot.
Yeah, it was worth a shot. But yeah, no psych help. So no glasses, no dental work the whole time. Well, I had a tooth pulled, but no cleanings, no glasses. Everything was just, we don't have money for it. We don't have money, but you have, of course, money to pay for the 50, 60 hours overtime every week. This guy's off, and this guy's working, this guy's working. You have money to pay that, but not to hire somebody to do what they're supposed to do. So using 10-year-old glasses, teeth just hurting, because you can't get a cleaning. Haven't had cleaning in 4 years, so just, and the blessing came, and God ordained that Trump won again, and here we are, struggling again, adjusting to being up, trying to recover because everything is lost.
Yeah.
So, there's something to say to him about the whole halfway house time and all that process, because I was supposed to be out March 11th anyway for 9 months of halfway house.
Right.
Because you go there, you get a job, you start building a bank account, you start getting some time to get some wheels. Everything kind of slowly works to getting to be able to support yourself. When they just dump you on the street, say, "Oh, you've been partying," you're happy as hell and you're ecstatic. But that next day, when reality hits, you're like, "Shit, I have no home, have no car, have no job. The only money I have is what I had when I came out, which is a few $100s that you try to save up from, people helping you or that you had, for working Unicor, and that's it. Your VA's turned off. How do I get that started? I'm pretty homeless, so you're starting out just kicked to the street with nothing. And that is a huge fear, and that's really hard. In 2 weeks now, I'm not gonna lie, it's just as hard as being picked up. It's almost I tell myself now, man, it'd be easier if I was still in. Because you knew you had a routine. Here it's a fear. I got to do something. I got to get a job. What am I going to do? Oh my gosh, I got to be able to afford a house. I can't even go out and get gas. I can't afford to fix this truck that needs to run in order to get a job. So it all stacks up, and now you're out. So you have your family, and outside of that, you have people helping you out here, and it's been a blessing. I never did any of the gifts and goes the whole time I was in, but I understand it now. I always figured, man, there's a way I can make it. There's a way I can make it. The pride and this and that, I can do this. We'll figure it out. I still got retirement money. But when all that's gone and you're here, I don't know how to do it. It's overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing about the halfway house thing, I ended up having to go to a halfway house for 2 weeks. I should have gotten it for like 6 months, but they my case manager never put in the paperwork until right before my sentence was up. And being in the halfway house myself when I had a place to go, and it really dawned on me how stupid it was. You know, I was there for 2 weeks for essentially no reason, but it seems to me from the stories I've heard too, basically the people who needed the halfway house never got it, and the people who did get it didn't want to be there. And so it just seems like the entire system, pardon or not, really the BOP just kind of sets people up for failure. But you know, you are out now. I know there's a lot that you know, you and I are going to work on in terms of getting stuff out. But
Yes.
I want to give you the opportunity right now, like give you the floor to talk about anything or address anything you think the public ought to know, but probably doesn't really anything.
All right. Well, Timmy, you know, the whole time I've been in there, I've watched probably 1,000 hours of that tablet, you know, and of taking notes that were pertinent to me, and then also seeing as it was pertinent to me, and picking up on things. You go down a rabbit hole of like, well, he just pushed that lady and knocked her out. Well, why would he do that? Well, and you start digging through these rabbit holes, and you build databases. You use Excel files, and you start building tools to get the truth out. You know, the college of collusion, right? The wheels were turning, and the understanding that they're never going to release these videos. There's a reason why. There's only a handful of Capitol Police videos that have been released, and there's no MPD body-worn camera videos released unless they were part of somebody's trial, right? Unless they're part of somebody's discovery that went public. There's not a whole lot of it out there. You know, there's just not. But you know that there's the 50 guys, there's the 20 guys that were heinous cops kicking people in the head when they're down, you know, when the guy's already beating the shit out of him. Or you build this thing. And all I ever wanted to do the whole time I was in, as I told you, you're alone. You want to be heard. You want to be able to talk with somebody. You want to have a voice. My goal in all of this since day one was to get the truth out. And the truth has not been told. The truth is in the MPD body-worn camera videos. Judicial Watch has sued numerous times to try to get it. They've been denied. Numerous people have tried to get it. They've been denied because they know when that body cam footage comes out, the whole narrative of January 6th changes. It hands down changes. And I'm not saying Capitol Police didn't do anything wrong or this and that, or, you know, pushing that guy off the ledge and he breaks both his legs, or, you know, shooting people in the face with plastic rounds, whatever they were, you know. And there was a point that I've said this before on the interview, is MPD showed up, and you could even see the Capitol Police were scared of the MPD. They were like shocked of the shit that they saw going on. So even the Capitol Police watch the videos and see the responses on the MPD body cam videos. They're like, what in the F are you guys doing? What? You can just see it in their face like, oh my God, stop, you know? So I really want the people to understand that there's a process that has to happen, and stuff has to come out, and it's got to be, in my opinion, linked to the notes that it's a few, you know, what I would call experts who spent time doing that stuff. You, me, Megs, Kenny, McKellop, you know, all the people who took notes and all the people who spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hundreds of hours on end combing through this stuff because you have nothing else to do. When you start building tools and telling you, I know that in this zone, these are the officers that were in this zone, the 1 to 115. I can tell you what zone the Capitol, what officers were there at what time. You start building that database. You start building, you know, you see a body cam footage up there. You see a number, but you don't know what cop it is. I can tell you because I built that database. Well, I hand wrote it out. I played every video from the very start till like 2:30, 2:40 p.m. And every video, I hit play, copy the body cam number. You know, what, 6039, 2101, or whatever it is up there on the body cam videos. That number I wrote down, and the evidence.com told you what officer it was, you know. So you build this. Like, I had somebody send me like 5 of them yesterday and said, hey, I got body cam numbers. I don't know who the officers are. I was able to pull out my list. That's officer this, and this. That's who officers are. What? How'd you do that? So we have the tools, Tim. You have them. I have them. A lot of people need to see that And whether it be, I'd love to raise some money to get the equipment to do a podcast and get out there visually. And I need to get people, and I think we're trying to start work on it, is now that all this has happened and all these charges are dropped, there is no more investigation in any of this stuff. So there's no more reason to say that you can't release these body cam videos. And I want to, again, I want to be that person to help get the J6 truth out, because I lived it for 4 years. I've seen it, you've seen it, we've all seen it. The public has not seen it. So I'm asking them for their help to please understand that good people made mistakes in what they thought was the right mistake. Good initiative, bad judgment in some aspects of it, but we're not bad people. You know, we did what we thought we needed to do. Those veterans out there who carry issues and carry PTSD, who thought they're trained to protect people. They're trained to put themselves in between the threat and the victim, and that's called courage. You know, putting yourself in the line of something, knowing that it's going to affect you. You take the hit, you take the blame, or whatever it is, based off that individual that's getting hurt. That's called courage. Bravery is like you did. You know, it's different from bravery. Courage is something totally different. You know, to inject yourself into that and to put yourself in between to try to stop that. And whether it be political, the election, some people were there for elections, some people were there for the mask mandates, you know, but we all had a reason for being there. We all put ourselves in that between what we thought was right and wrong. In our training, in the military training, you just respond. You don't, you know, you fight, you flight, or you freeze. You know, and most of the people I knew, every person I know in D.C. that was a military veteran, you had that fight instinct. You know, there was no question. It was that this has to stop. I got to protect these people. That truth needs to come out. But it is, I'm asking people to please help make it possible to be able to establish a very good podcast that is dedicated to identifying officers who should be looked at, the training, the people in command, the discovery that they have, that they hid, that we have access to, that we know they lied about. We have all this stuff. We have to have a format to get it out. I'm asking Congress people to bring people in front of them to have and tell a story and to share some of this information that we have with them, to get Congress and to get lawyers and to get DOJ and to get attorney generals to understand that there are people who live this, know the truth, and it's exactly, you know, promises made, promises kept. We know what happened. And I ask the public for help and support, whether it be, you know, help out and get some goals, because there's a few of us that want to get together and do this, whether it is just your moral support. If you ever hear people talking about January 6th, you say, you know what, that's not what I heard, you know, but we'll just wait. It's coming. You know, I need you to stand up and those people to do that, to let them know that the truth is coming. Dark will go to light, and we will win.
I think it's absolutely important that people understand, you know, they're still holding back CCTV, but, you know, even the CCTV only tells a fraction of the story. The body camera footage that you're talking about is probably more important because it gives you the perspective of the police and the people immediately adjacent to them, and it has audio. And,
absolutely.
You know, there are a million different perspectives, and that sheds a much bigger light, I think, than even a lot of the CCTV. The CCTV gives you the broad picture. The body cameras, that really puts you in the position of the people who were there. And I think absolutely that would help break down a lot more of the narrative than even the CCTV. It all needs to come out, but the body cameras absolutely need to come out. As you said, there's no reason there should be any protective orders or anything like that that's holding them back, especially since the trials are over. And the protective orders never protected the body camera footage in the first place, to my knowledge.
No, because it wasn't highly sensitive.
Right.
Sensitive or highly sensitive, that was either internal, external was sensitive. External Capitol video was sensitive, and internal was highly sensitive. Those two were regulated by the protective order. Yeah. Body cams were never regulated by protective order. I can say anything and show anything about a body cam video without fear that I broke some protective order.
Yeah.
You know, And that's where it's at. But you need the Capitol video to come out with it because it shows it like a top level down, a bird's eye view of the incident, of what you see happening before, and you actually run that side by side with the body worn camera, and you're going to get the exact clear picture, hands down. Well, this is bullshit, man. Holy crap.
And that's how we found out. That's how we proved that Webster got hit in the head first. The body camera didn't really show it. It almost seemed like it was glitching at the time, but the dome camera. The dome camera proved it. It all needs to come out, and I'm right there with you. I want to do everything I can to help you get the truth out. I look forward to the whole truth coming out, and I'm going to do anything I can to work with you or help you with that mission.
Help get this out, and the gifts can go. It's going to take the money to buy the equipment and to get the podcast to do it right, and anything and any help, donation of equipment or anything. That's the goal, and if it takes whatever it takes, that I believe we have a great footing, great foundation to make that happen.
Yeah, and especially now, I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to organize as former hostages, but also those who know the story. I think a lot of people. Yeah. A lot of us who were in there had nothing better to do than to watch video when it was finally available. A lot of people who lived through J6, they know the story, but they didn't see what we saw when we were sitting there watching the video. And so I think that there's no better authority on this than you and those of us who were in there. To wrap this up, Dan, I want to say this. I'm like I said before, I felt very guilty leaving you and others behind when I finally went. I was happy to leave, but I wasn't happy to leave others behind. And I'm grateful that, you're finally out. One thing, and I don't want to be like, I'm not a very emotional person, but I am a loyal person, and I recognize loyalty in others. And so I saved everything. You remember I was, kind of a slob. I was a pack rat, but I had a note. I have a note that you left me one day. I guess I was sleeping, and you'd come to my cell, and you left a note for me. It was, "Hey, you were sleeping, just checking up on you, brother, Dan." And I held on to that, and you were always a loyal guy. You always had my back, and I want everybody to know your character. You weren't just some guy who got in trouble. You were a good person who got in trouble for bullshit. And I can't think of anybody that I would rather have on my side. I can't think of anybody that I would trust more to have my back. And I can't think of anybody that I would rather, going forward, be the one to tell the truth of what happened that day. And I love you, man. And I'm so happy that you're out.
I appreciate it, Tim, and thanks for this time. And I know, I feared about doing this because my brain doesn't click sometimes, and I'm like a dog that sees a squirrel. Sometimes I go left and right. But like I was saying before, man, you did the same thing to me whenever I was in my cell and we're locked in. We made that attempt to come by and check on everybody. Those guys that might just need that little push, or it helps me being out on my hour to come and talk to the person because I have something to say, or I can help somebody else because you're in there alone, And I mentioned names before. Shane Jenkins was an amazing brother. There's so many people in there. Ryan Nichols, I saw him just the other day. I love every single one of you guys. Rob Morris. I'm probably going to forget somebody, but you all know who I love in there and who will always be my brothers. And Tim, you're one of them. You and your family has helped me so much and helped so many people that, your humor and you just made me laugh, and just, you had a way of bringing a smile upon people's faces when they really needed them, and just, I look forward to the day that we all get together and we just have a chance to sit down and laugh. Because I'm not saying, there were some really, really good times in there with all of us. And there was that rare officer that came in and had a heart and allowed us a little more time out together than others would ever think about. So there was some really funny moments, and those were things that I keep to myself and that we will cherish forever. That they're eternal to us, and we had fun. But what else can you do when everything around is falling apart? But try to laugh. Hope, faith, and love, man. That's all we had in there, and we got through it.
We absolutely did, and we're going to get through the future too.
Well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for being with me today, but also thank you for being with me in person and in spirit the past few years. And the only other thing I have to say right now is boats and hoes. Boats and hoes.
If you're doing this, we're driving the boat. I love you, brother.
I love you too, man. Keep in touch with yourself.
I will do, man. We'll keep in touch. All right, have a good one.
You
Tell
too.
the family hello.